to shareholders, then let's make sure we follow this Twitter Space thing up and figure out the right way. Now, on the whole thing of can I host Twitter Spaces, that's why I didn't want a board role, because I have a business. I value educating, and I write books, and I want to continue doing. That's more important to me than anything else. But I also have a big duty to try and see if I can support NewCo if I add value to it. They decided that board observer is where I added value, and that suits me because I don't want to have a board seat in a US NASDAQ company. But so what does that mean? It means that I can attend board meetings, and it means that I get access to all the different minutes, documents, board meetings, and everything in a good and well-run corporate, public company. And then I can't talk about non-public information, but I can share whatever I want about public information. Every quarter, new information will become public. And I can talk about anything that I want. And I'm not a board member, so I don't have those fiduciary duties. My job is just to observe the board. And if I'm adding value, they'll keep me as a board observer. If I see something that I think is really I wouldn't want to be a part of, then I can resign. And and that's the role. And I'm just taking it one day at a time to find out how I can add value really in that.
Lawrence?
Morning from the East Coast of the United States. I try and look at things from 30,000 feet up, 50,000 feet up, and I try and look at as much of this as being behind us as possible. I believe that all of you, the majority of you, are now partners of mine in this NewCo, when we're approved. And I believe that the board meetings, the quarterly reports that'll be public will be on Twitter Spaces eventually for all Fortune 500 companies. And like Alexander said, how do we come together? We got to be positive. We've got to give, unfortunately, the benefit of the doubt in spite of the garbage that goes on. We're regulated. We've got a halving coming up. We've got a squeaky clean, so to speak, NewCo when we're approved. And we could be leaders. We are leaders. And people like you, Simon, have gone above and beyond in so many ways. And in spite of your feeling that the Americans don't love you or want you or need you, and the same goes for all of you, Tony, Sharon, every one of you. This is all precedent setting, and we have the ability to move it forward in a positive and a constructive manner. And I think you've made them all aware of everything that this team of people has been able to expose, has been able to rub in their noses, so to speak, taking all of this money from us and doing such a half-assed job, intentionally or unintentionally, to get us to this point. I'd like to find the good in all of it, and I really feel very strongly that with continued guidance and support, with Cam going after all of these turkeys that Rob stole and cheated us, I just think we've got a great group moving forward. And we may have differences of opinions, but we live in a four-color world. I've been on the internet since it was text only. And this is phenomenal. I unfortunately, I'm struggling not going bankrupt from this disaster and other business issues that all of us are having. But I see light at the end of the tunnel for the first time in the last 14 months, that we can come out of it with as little of what we started with. And these shares play a huge role with your input. Simon, Tony, Sharon, everybody, Cam, all of you. I mean, anyways, enough for me today. Everybody have a great weekend.
Thank you, Lawrence. Orpheus.
Yeah, just a little bit of my 2 cents. I've kind of been like disconnected from the whole process. I mean, honestly, when I look back, I didn't even have to open up a Twitter, listen to a single Twitter space, and just cast a vote at the end of the day, or not even cast a vote. And I probably wouldn't have even had to go through all the stress and ended up exactly where I am right now. I could have just blocked it all out. Funny how that stuff all happens, right? But you know, the fact that these guys are coming in, they're putting up 50 million, and I know everyone's like, that's not a big chunk of money, but 50 million is pretty serious. Not in comparison to what, but still, for one group of people to put that kind of money up, and then to jump on the board and try to dictate the success of this company, only to collect fees every year, and in, I don't know, 4 or 5 years make their 50 million back and run the company into the ground. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And so, whatever you guys want to say about their lack of communication or their shit communication, or that Twitter's like because Twitter really is like a childish playground where people block and unblock each other. I mean, it's funny to to watch professionals uh, um, turn themselves into simpletons by playing these games. But in an overall perspective, trying to adapt to this new technology, I guess I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. I don't feel that this is a bad thing. We've got a company that came in that took some of what we've got to try to turn this into a successful company. Remember, they gain a track record too. It's their reputation. Everybody knows what's going on with Celsius. Everybody knows who's coming in. Everybody knows who's running this gamut. And the fact that we're at the beginning of a transition from analog to digital currencies and blockchain. I mean, we've got a lot of tailwinds that are going to help push us forward. And I'd like to give the benefit of the doubt and stay positive and realize that now we're exactly what you guys have said. We're company owners. We now own shares in a mining company, in a staking company, and you got big dogs like BlackRock out there that are buying up shares. Now, BlackRock is huge. Larry Fink is a pretty smart guy, ruthless, probably. I mean, I don't even want to think about what he's had to do to get to where he's gotten. But still, that's none of my business. The point is you follow the money. The money pours into Bitcoin and Ether. Obviously, those are the places you want to have your money for the most security. And you see big guys like Larry Fink, and then you've got all these other companies trying to apply for a spot ETF as well. I mean, it's good news, guys. I mean, considering where we were and where we are, it's good news. I would recommend just keep staying positive. At the end of the day, man, we had nothing. As soon as the word bankruptcy hit, I basically wrote everything off. And I know it's not easy for everyone to do that, but at some point, you got to put shit behind you and just focus on the future. And I imagine that
Thank you, Orpheus.
Hey, Orpheus. So one thing.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I just want to finish
Did you
my
cut
thought.
out?
Sorry, thanks. Just want to finish my thought. It's also like Twitter leads to a lot of hype, a lot of distraction, a lot of people talking. You go on Twitter one day, you're depressed because 10 people are saying one thing, and then the next day you're excited because 10 people are saying the opposite. There's really no grounding, except for maybe 10% of what we hear. 90% of it is just distraction and chaos. So I can also appreciate why some blocking is going on, especially at the board level. They just want to focus on getting out there, turning this thing around, making themselves uber successful because they have that opportunity, right? They have that opportunity to make themselves uber successful. They've already indicated NASDAQ listings. They've already brought on a board. We may not agree with it. And some of those people may not be the best. But through the process, we'll be able to determine and weed out the weak ones from the strong ones and have our influence through the evolution of the company, right? Because we're just at the first stages. So that's all I wanted to say. I'll go ahead and pass off the mic.
Thank you, Orpheus. Thank you. Harry, you're up, brother.
Harry.
Hey, good morning. Hey, Gabriel, everybody.
Hey, man.
I was gonna let Simon respond real quick because what I'm about to say I have a unique perception as to what's going to happen. But Simon, go ahead if you want to respond to Orpheus.
Harry dropping bombs again. Let's go.
Yeah, let's bring it. Tony's getting excited as soon as he saw Harry. He doesn't like the Kumbaya ones. Yeah, what I would say is the bit that I hated most about this whole process was crony capitalism. And so, as an observer, and I all of the people that I think were picked, I just want to ensure this isn't crony capitalism. Like we got a starting board, and if everyone is perfect and great. Oh shit.
Yeah, it's good. Keep going.
Okay. Yeah, if we got the best managers, the best partners, then the best board and the best observers. If I'm shit at my role and I'm value destructing, then I should go. If the CEO is shit, then the CEO should go. If the independents are value destructing and not value adding, then they should go. And if the creditor members and UCC members are not doing it, then they should go. Everyone should get a fair shot to prove himself. And let's make sure we haven't got a crony capitalism structure like Chapter 11, where everyone's buddy and giving contracts to the people that aren't necessarily appropriate for the role. That's what I'd say, Orpheus. So as long as we get the governance structure right, and that's what I take seriously, I'll try and make sure those docs aren't, because there's a bunch of crony capitalist documents I'm seeing right now that I think need to be updated when the board votes on that, and that's why we can't have just Fahrenheit and board members looking out for themselves on those docs. That's why I think the observer role was important. Go on, Harry, tear us down.
I am, and I will. I don't believe this company lasts. Well, this company is going to last until the onset of the beginning of the next winter. I think they're going to carve this up into pieces and sell it off or maximize any utility out of it, and then it's going to be gone. The actions, and this is what I've been saying all along, speak louder than any words. And the actions that's why I labeled it Celsius 2.0, except now we have regulations. A lot of people in that board and top level are going to make a lot of money. Let's see what trickles down to us creditors. And I have a nagging feeling that we're going to once again be left holding a bag, except this time we're equity holders, not secured. And I believe that's what I called it yesterday, 2 to 3 years. This company has a very strong possibility it's done. And thanks to CryptoMiami for pointing some of that stuff out with how long these mining companies last. And effectively, that's what we're going to be. And they're going to take advantage currently leading up to this bull market. And at some point, you're going to see the sell-offs. My only faith for us creditors in getting a bit more of our value back, believe it or not, is that litigation trust. I have little to no faith that this NewCo company, the shares, I elected for more crypto. And again, it was under duress because that's the only viable option. that was given to me at the time to get more of the crypto out, compared to the other options that they offered. And when you start asking your friends, and Simon, I implore you, all right, go see if any credible institution and or CEO of other companies would invest with this board. And you're going to get the same answer that I've been asking and getting the same response about. And the answer has been no. So there you have it.
Thank you, Harry. I just want to add something very quickly because you've heard me talk about Bitcoin mining a lot, but most of my legitimate hands-on experience comes from the DeFi world. So in the last bull run, I was the front face of a DeFi project that is the precursor to Twitter. We ran 24/7 rooms on Discord, and we would have hundreds of people in our community rooms. That was my job. I was the front face, and we ran just like the Celsius community. We did a token raise, so 24/7 community voice chat, just like this, like we're doing. 25,000 people in our Discord. We did a community raise of 200. Our DeFi treasury had $250 million in it, and I was on that team and had the fiduciary for my community. And it was quite interesting. And we had a developer, we built a project, we had a token launch with a huge treasury, and we were sort of like a safe DeFi project with a large DAO. And we created a DAO and governance structures, and it was supposed to be the future of DeFi. The project still exists, by the way. I'm only telling you this because of something that Simon brought up, which is like, we're all going to kind of splinter off in our own little interest groups. And, you hear me talking about mining, but, the truth is, I've read Noah's papers. I know what Proof Group's interests are. I've seen what he likes, Thorchain, Aptos, it's interesting. I have no fear that for the next year or two, like ETH staking is the most brainless thing on the planet. I have zero concerns about oversight over ETH staking or that the board can handle it. He has mentioned the word restaking. My ears perked up. I don't know that anyone on the board understands what restaking even means, but what I will say, I'm only bringing this up to say that once we get past year 2, I think the regulatory overhang on ETH is enough that it'll just be staked and earned yield. But, if the current deal structure, like if this is the deal we're going to get with Fahrenheit and they're going to bring venture in, as you go out the risk curve in ETH and we start getting into DeFi, there's no alignment, right? Bitcoin mining and the skill set to run Bitcoin mining from a governance standpoint and from a data center and from a energy background skill set, auditing, all of those skill sets have nothing to do with ETH, have nothing to do with ETH staking, have certainly nothing to do with DeFi. And if you want to be a fiduciary on DeFi, and go out that risk curve, the skill set that would be needed by a board advisor, board people, fiduciaries who understand the fundamentals of ETH and how compliance is done on the ETH side. Like there's no shared vision for that to exist. I'm just throwing that out there because after year 2, like I said, ETH staking 2 years, no biggie. After that, if they go out the risk curve, Bitcoin mining and DeFi do not mix. It just doesn't mix. So skill sets completely different, governance different. The people you would hire for the board would be different. So just my 2 cents for those holding long. So who's up next? Ramsey.
Hey, good morning, guys. Thank you for having me on. I just had a couple of quick questions. Maybe Simon, you'd know this, or Tony. Just to confirm, so me being in the convenience class, I would not get any proceeds from the litigation trust in the future, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I kind of contributed my claim for not for nothing. Hopefully you guys can get more. My second thing would be, I have all my crypto in there as Bitcoin. Would I still get a distribution of Bitcoin and ETH?
Yeah.
Or would it Okay, so I don't get to choose to just keep it as Bitcoin.
No.
Okay, got it. Okay. One comment I did want to make on the Bitcoin mining was I feel like the rates are the electric rates are really high for Celsius. It's kind of hard to compete with other players in this game, being so high. What is it, like 10 cents per kilowatt or 8 cents? Something like that.
Michael, do you know how many cents?
Well, I'm sorry about that. Someone was DMing me. What was the question again, Ramsey? I heard the
What
kilowatt hour. What was the question?
what is Celsius? What is NewCo going to be paying per kilowatt hour for the mining rigs?
You know, it's interesting. What he said in the space, like we've seen no agreements. That's one of the things that's been missing from all of the data, all of the docket dumps that happened in the last week. Like we've seen, the build out of Cedarvale. We've seen, we've seen a lot about energy, but we haven't seen any like power agreements. We haven't seen any guarantees. Like we don't know. What Asher said in Spaces, though, is that his experience in Texas and US, just as an aside, US Bitcoin Group does run its own 220 megawatt facility in Kings Mountain, so it's actually 60 miles away from us. Our facility, our new one that we're building potentially, and he said that it's like he gave a range of like 2 cents per kilowatt hour up to 4, but it's variable and it depends on curtailment, seasonality. But he said 2 to 4. But just remember, if it's 4 cents per kilowatt hour, right? That's the base rate. But then, there's still a management fee, right? For running the miners. So the 4
Right.
becomes 6 in a way, right? Or if we have miners that are being hosted, that's more like 6 to 8 cents, right? So it's a little tricky, but it sounded like 2 to 4 is what he gave.
Well, two to 4 is
as a
great.
base. Right, but that's a base rate. Remember, we're not really self-mining. Self-mining would be us getting 2 cents with our own employees, and we get all the Bitcoin, right? 2 cents when you have a management contract, and an older fleet post-halving. So that's great. But remember, you're also sharing the profits of the Bitcoin back to the management company. So 30% of that Bitcoin goes back to the management company, right? So it's a little trickier, but yes, 2 cents is amazing. But remember, that's variable. That's not a fixed rate, right?
Yeah, 30% is horrible, though. I'll be honest. And the rigs also themselves are kind of getting obsolete as time goes on. I mean, those S19J Pros released like 3-4 years ago, almost, something like that.
Yeah, like 2 years, like two and a half. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
There's still a bunch of them in operation, dude. Yeah, but remember, we're not in the halving yet, so
I know,
they are
we're
still.
almost...
Yeah, they're still running. They're still in profit, but yeah, absolutely, we're running. And obviously, Ramsey, the sooner we get out of this nonsense, we still have an opportunity to be really mining all our rigs before the halving and stacking Bitcoin. I mean, obviously, like the more this thing delays, and if something happens with the deal or we get pushed 4 months, I mean, we're really going to be running into the halving as we emerge, which I'm praying to God we don't. So,
Okay, good insight, Crypto. I don't have any more questions.
Thank you, Ramsey.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Ramsey, it's super tricky, right? I mean, like this is the variable where you have to do like this macro. Like, I know that on Twitter you see a lot of these spreadsheets that are trying. You're trying to ascertain this sort of value, these standard P&Ls, but it's really hard to do when you're projecting out to the future. We don't really know the energy rates, but we can just kind of figure it out based on, again, and we don't know what the Bitcoin hash rate's going to be either. So
The difficulty
it's definitely a bit
keeps
tricky.
growing. The difficulty keeps going up, and as newer
Oh yeah, it hit
newer
520. It hit 520 last week for a spell. Yeah,
Jeez.
crazy.
Yeah, as time goes on, newer models come out, newer rigs, ASICs. It's like we're going to be seeing less and less of Bitcoin. You know what I mean? It's not ideal.
I had a question. How much of this 450 is going to be allocated to future mining equipment? Do we have that information?
That's the importance of the board. So, you know, Asher's going to be pitching up to the board his opportunities. Noah and Proof Group will be pitching their opportunities up. You know, and then the board get to vote on it. And so obviously Asher will have to step out of the decisions that involve himself. So then it becomes like a wasted board seat for when it becomes proposals from the mining, which is the most important thing initially, which I think everyone should try and diversify from as soon as possible. But yeah, that's everyone's going to be pitching up to the board, and that's why, to me, like, governance just became the most important thing, and that's why I
Yeah,
spent
Simon,
time.
Who's everyone? Sorry, who's everyone? It's just
Ramsey, real quick.
staking?
Ramsey, yeah, let me just add a comment real quick because I want to bookend what you
That
just
was
said. You know, your question was about mining. Was about mining equipment, right? But really, the first big ticket to hit the board is going to be the build out of Cedarvale. So that is they're aiming for a 220 megawatt facility, and U.S. Bitcoin Group has sort of a fixed cost, which is, you know, for their build outs. I mean, I'm going to round it at roughly $400,000 per megawatt. So, you know, you're looking at roughly 87 million, something in that ballpark. So, you know, in the first 6 months, Celsius will be paying, you know, roughly 87 million to build out that facility. Where's that 87 million going to come from, right? The E-Stack, they're going to do a raise. How's that going to happen? That's going to be a huge decision, like right out of the gate for the board, is the build out of Cedarvale. And that Cedarvale facility will also be taking about, in the contract, by the way, about roughly $800,000 a month to staff that facility to get it built out, and, you know, managers and all that kind of thing. So that's going to be the biggest expense out of the gate, and that's going to be the big board decision.
So wait, so that means we're self-mining the Cedarville facility?
Once it's built out, yeah. Celsius has
Okay.
four. Well, yeah. Celsius has four existing mining facilities right now.
Right. That we're self-mining, or that we've given management
that we're self-mining
to? Okay.
Again,
that kind of takes away the whole issue of a management fee of 30% of the Bitcoin. So if Celsius is already on the track to self-management, the 87 million makes sense to build out the facility.
No, there's going to be it's all managed. It's all managed on the management contract. There's not Celsius staff managing. No.
Then why the fixed amount of 800,000 opposed to 30% of Bitcoin?
To build out the sites.
That again, we couldn't hear the
question. But you said to staff I think you said to staff and manage the facility would be about 800,000.
Yeah, to staff the build out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we pay
the build out, not the the actual, not when it's up and running.
Right. So the NewCo will pay the service provider, right?
Right.
$800K for the on-site services for the build out on top of
the management fee?
Correct. In addition, there's lots of other pass-through costs. Equipment.
Well, yeah, the equipment is something that, but they got a pot of about 450 million. So wait, they got a pot of about 450, right? Sorry, I just kind of want to understand this a little better. They have about $450 million, which could obviously increase if the price of Bitcoin goes up. So they got 450, they got 450, and you guys are telling me that these guys are just gonna give themselves $10 million raises, break the company up, and say goodbye?
No, no one said that.
Yeah,
no one said that.
So what I'm thinking, so I think I think the amount of money that they've requested seems like a pretty solid amount to, number one, build out facilities and update the the mining equipment. Obviously piecemeal, not all at once, but to update that mining equipment to put themselves in a competitive situation. Also, one of the members is from U.S. Bitcoin mining group. I mean, does he not have the qualifications that I would understand that somebody from that position moving over to Celsius would understand how this thing is actually supposed to run, what the intricacies are, what the overhead is? I believe it was a CFO, right, of USBTC?
So Orpheus,
Yeah.
Asher is not moving over from an employment standpoint. Asher is president of the new HUT, the HUT 8 merger of equals between US Bitcoin and HUT 8. So he has an executive position within HUT 8 and operating the US Bitcoin portion of that business is the service provider to our investment in NewCo, and he's also currently proposed slated for the board. US Bitcoin is associated in the syndicate of the Fahrenheit investors, alongside the CEO of the NewCo. Yes, he has 2 years experience in standing up sites and some operations of Bitcoin mining. They started at a fleet size of about 7 to 8,500 miners 2 years ago. And so Asher and US Bitcoin has responsibility not only for what will be the NewCo, our invested in NewCo, but also for sizable responsibilities for Mara, Marathon Mining, and some others.
It's a big plate. Simon.
Yeah, so these are 2 features that were taken out of the Bank to the Future bid that didn't make it across here. One was that you have to put shares in the sponsor within NewCo, and that's why we did that very deliberately, because when the business that is the sponsor benefits from managing these amounts of assets, you want the NewCo to have the upside in that. So also that was one of the things I really pushed for in the Nova Wolf and Figure bid, because if we were going to list on the and that's why in the Bank to the Future bid we were giving equity to align interests as a result of the upside and the valuation that would come from managing the assets. And this one, that hasn't made it across. So what I got quite interested about with Michael Arrington's episode is whether that's an opportunity, because if the funding fell through, then the opportunity to invest and then do a distribution to NewCo to align interests, you could end up with what we originally proposed in Bank to the Future. The other thing we did in our bid is we didn't do a forced investment, we did a rights issue. And the reason is because you don't want people that don't want to be there. You want everyone that wants to be there. And I think we could have raised that amount of money using the toggle if it was done as a rights issue where everyone could have elected. And I think in the end, it turned out that we could have done the rights issue. And that was one of the major reasons why they rejected our bids, because they thought the rights issue was too risky. You have to do a guaranteed capital or forced investment. But if these 2 mechanisms were there, and and this is where it just reaches the point where you got to go for good enough is good enough. But then if you don't have those, what can you replace it with? Well, you got to replace it with, the ability to remove conflicts of interests, where managers, board members can be replaced easily if they're not performing the right function, and then gradually diversifying away from the management model to building something valuable in-house. Yeah.
So my question, right? And I was gonna say this yesterday, but I didn't. But maybe I should have. If hoping this NewCo company makes it through, what are the chances that a Coinbase or other regulated crypto company that's publicly traded comes in now?
What, to acquire it? They could just
Yes,
start
sir.
acquiring shares because it's public.
Acquire it.
Yeah,
But
once it's public, then you just have to meet the
51%, right?
the exchange code to acquire. I think
That's what I'm saying, right?
SBF was trying to buy Robinhood and Goldman Sachs with client money.
So, Harry, are you referring
Harry.
to a period between receiving the initial shares and getting all the way through the direct listing process? Is that
No.
your question, or entire when it's public listed?
Well, both, right, Sharon? Because there is two possibilities here, right? If they get the plan approved, right, which is now a almost foregone conclusion that it's going to get approved, right? Whether it is through a cram down or whatever, we'll know. I think the week of October 2nd onwards, and ratified by the judge. Then they begin, this distribution method, right? We get the shares, whatever. I would be more inclined to have them start looking at potential investors and or buyers to come. And the thing that I've noticed the most is, when is an asset most valuable? Well, an asset's most valuable right before a large event, a big event, like a bull market. It will fetch the most amount of money in crypto that its value is perceived. Again, this is all perception, right? And I would definitely be looking at a Coinbase as company, especially since that company is already publicly traded, and now they're able to bring in this into their wheelhouse right before a bull market. Bring everything internal to them.
Yeah, Harry,
So,
Harry, I don't think, again, America, the United States, where we are in the regulatory framework, we've got Bitcoin mining, which has to date no regulatory overhang, nor does Bitcoin. ETH has regulatory overhang. Depending on the outcome of the election, and obviously there'll be no stablecoin bill until, it'll take over a year until the next election. What you would need to make the ETH part and DeFi work is regulatory clarity, which is not going to happen for a little while, right? You're going to need a stablecoin bill and clarity over ETH. This is what I was sort of hinting at when I was saying, in 3 years, when you get clarity on ETH, what can be done with that ETH stack, and what will be required from a regulatory standpoint. And then the Bitcoin side, they're misaligned. The skill set, the need, so to me, I think we're saying the same thing, which is this will be ripe for an acquisition, right? The Bitcoin miner gets acquired, and then the ETH does something else, because these are completely different regulatory frameworks and skill sets. So I think this is, personally, listen, we've spent a year and a half speculating in conspiracy theories. So, to me, this is an acquisition play. That's all.
they're going to carve it up.
Yeah. So I think the only difference I think I'm saying between you and me is, I see the carve up, but it's not now. It's later. Yeah. There's still value to, later.
Exactly. Within a 2 to 3 period. That's what I said initially. And now I just gave you a company that could possibly be one of the companies that buys something of this company. It's a carve up. This is a carve up play in the way I see it. I luckily have not been barred yet, but I'm pretty much sure after today I will. I looked at Arrington's social or Twitter, whatever, X, whatever you want to call it. The last several series of posts, apart from Celsius, has been AI and healthcare, is what I was seeing. So I don't know what Arrington's, primarily interests are. Like,
He's
it
an
seems to be
investor. He's an
I
investor.
understand.
Yeah, purely.
Yeah, Sharon. But if you look at it at his non-Celsius, non-Ripple posts, the other ones, I didn't go back. I think I only went back till February of this year, right? It's all being health something, and AI. That's what I've seen. So I don't know if that's his passion or what he's interested in, but it seems to be that direction. So if that's the
Yeah,
case,
every
unless
VC, yeah, I mean, every VC is interested in AI, right? I mean, obviously, for obvious reasons. So that's not a surprise. That's not a surprise.
right, but the other one was also healthcare and health, which I get it. That's a very viable, as we all want to live longer, and advancement in healthcare is definitely look how far we've come along in healthcare in the past 20, 30, 40 years. But again, I see what's happening here as an acquisition. They're going to make money on it, and then I think it's going to get carved up. I think it's going to be broken apart and sold off. Is my opinion as to what's going to happen. And we as equity holders, fingers crossed, right, that we at least get something out of this. But who knows?
Yeah, and I think, Harry, if you heard in Spaces, we had the data center expert. We had one of our, again, speak of the amazing Celsius creditors. One of the Celsius creditors actually builds out data centers around the world. So Sharon and I
Yeah,
sent him the documents on our data center build out. Like, he has no experience building Bitcoin, but it was very interesting to see what it would cost to build an AI data center. So, like, this is one of those narratives. You saw it on Asher's slide deck, like AI, AI and Bitcoin mining, they go hand in hand because they're both data centers and they need large amounts of power. But the build out, like the requirements for high compute in terms of, air conditioning, filtration, they need to be much cleaner, where Bitcoin's the sort of, most of it's air cooled, open air. I mean, these are completely different build outs, right? They both share power. They both share power and the need for cheap power, large throughput, land. But obviously they'd be different facilities. But anyway, so like to give you the difference, so we're building out Cedarvale at 220 megawatts for our Bitcoin mining, and it's going to be under Asher's plan, like let's say $400,000 per megawatt, which is still even pretty reasonable for Bitcoin. That's going to be, let's say, roughly $90 million to build out that Bitcoin mining facility. If that was a high compute data center, that he was saying it would be $3 million a megawatt, cheapest, up to 12 for like AI. So that you're talking like $500 million to multiple billions to build out a comparable AI data center adjacent to ours. So I'm just like, when you see AI, when you see data center power, AI versus Bitcoin, the AI stuff is like, and that's not the cost of the machines either. That's just the build out of the data center. So I thought you'd just find that interesting because you see that linked together a lot, right? Like AI and Bitcoin, but the AI data centers are insanely expensive to build out, not to mention the machines. So
Yeah, there's actually 4 levels or tiers of how you outfit for fit for use data centers, and it's around significantly more investment in backup capabilities, cooling redundancies, redundancies on the power and on the cooling, no fault tolerance. And no fault tolerance can be quite expensive to get the different levels of, N+1, all the way up to 2n+1 no fault tolerances. So it's all around layers and layers and redundancies of systems and infrastructure within the operation, and that can drive cost to be 20 times what Bitcoin miners needed, at least in the last few years, because you're comparing mining in virtually chicken coop type or chicken houses or containers to some of the high end of clean room, positive pressure, and beyond that type technologies. So in summary, there's 4 tiers or levels, and the costs can vary widely. They're very different operations.
Oh, I'm fully aware of data center usage because in my industry, we use it like to render all these CGI and whatnot applications, whether it's movies or music. So I'm fully aware as to how these centers are built out. Even more so, the concept of hot and cold aisles, where you literally are only cooling the hot aisle and facing the servers in a certain way. So that way it's almost like a back-to-back aspect from aisle to aisle. So you're only cooling one aisle. And obviously, as you well know, through convection currents, where you have the coolants coming in from the top because cold air sinks, and you create convection currents literally within each aisle to help cool. Yeah, I'm fully aware of how data centers are constructed, built, wired, and so on and so forth. Because earlier on, before I started touring and whatnot, I was also part of, me and my partner were also part of the movie and CGI stuff. So I'm fully aware of it. Go ahead, Kris.
Kris Broberg. How are you, buddy?
Hey, good. How are you? So I was just listening to all this, and I think maybe in my mind it kind of sums up what people are struggling with this company. Is we kind of know the parts and the pieces and some of the characters involved, but we don't really know what will be the philosophy of this company going forward and what it really is. Even I mean, to me, right now it strikes me mostly as maybe a technology investment company alternative, like a fund almost. And but we don't know if it will develop a philosophy of where we'll know like, oh yeah, they're probably going to go mostly this way. I mean, we were looking at it as a Bitcoin mining company, which makes sense a little bit, but it just seems to me, I think that's why, I guess that's Simon's focus on the governance is what's important, because that's ultimately what will determine the philosophy. I mean, if you look at a company like MicroStrategy, you're not wondering what the philosophy is there. And I think we got like the CEO from Algorand, we got Michael Arrington. Maybe so to me it looks almost more like a fund. I don't know what the CEO of Algorand means to the company. The board, I don't, hard to tell. I mean, honestly. So I think that's the struggle with it, and so it's just basically, a crapshoot where it's going to go, and we're all here to watch, I guess. So that's just my thoughts on. I think analyzing the parts is interesting, but I don't know. I think it needs a philosophy. So
Here's a conspiracy theory for you. They start off as a Bitcoin mining or crypto-based company, and they build out equally their AI infrastructure and then switch it over. Try that one on for a conspiracy theory. Using our
that's why I was bringing up the cost of an AI data center, and that does include the machines because it's fantastically expensive. But Kris, you mentioned something that triggered a memory, which is when this first came to fruition. I mean, I've known who Michael Arrington is forever, being a shitcoiner that I am. Even now, I'm all Bitcoin, but. Yeah, I mean, think about it, right? So Mike Arrington is, one of the largest investors in XRP, and you've got Algorand, which was named as a security by the SEC. So, between Steve Kokinos and, and Michael, whether he stays around or not, I mean, these folks are well acquainted with securities concerns around DeFi tokens. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I think the vision for this company, I mean, like we're like this post-emergence bankruptcy. You're absolutely right. You have to think of it almost like a digital fund. It's an ETH stake, it's an ETH hodl earning yield, and it's a Bitcoin miner. It's almost like a Galaxy digital fund. In reality, not but I think those two really know the implications of like messing around too much with ETH before there's any regulatory clarity. So that's why I keep saying the ETH. I'm so not worried about the ETH in the next 2 years. They're going to stake it. They'll have some venture. But like I said, eventually in 3 years, 2 to 3 years, when we get some regulatory clarity, then I think you're going to get a vision, right? If they're still around. Because that ETH stack could be a $2 billion ETH stack, right? So that's when I think you'll get a little more clarity, a little more visioning. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents.
But I think the point is I think that to develop that vision, like this board that's currently there, I think will be totally different, maybe even in a year, unless, and this is to Harry's point, it could be something that gets, that they could decide to sell off in pieces. I don't think that's going to happen, but I mean, we need the people need to come together that align in a vision, and then we need to see what that company is. And even if it's an investment fund, we need to know what that vision is. So, they also have all those other assets, some other investments in Polygon and things like that sitting there. And, I just, to me, it's just like an unclear what exactly this company is. So, but I'm excited about it. I mean, it's my hope, that's what it is. So it'll be interesting.
It will be. It's going to be fun to watch, right? I mean, we're watching the 2 biggest ideas in crypto right now, right? Bitcoin, North American Bitcoin mining, and Bitcoin, right? And this, this hopefully big Bitcoin cycle, and then what happens with ETH? I mean, that's going to take a little longer, but definitely exciting times. So, Simon.
Yeah, one other data point that people may not be aware of is there's a piece of regulations called the Investment Company Act of 1940. They have to comply with that because they actually can't be a public fund. That's regulated in a very different way. So they actually have to have a substantial operating business, and they have to be really careful. So when we were doing like the work on our bid, we had to ensure that it wasn't actually a fund and it was an operating company. So once you hit like a 30% threshold of just pure investment activity, and there's going to be all sorts of things, and they had to really dig into that when that hit valuation and stuff, because and this will come. Another good data point actually is we did have our I don't know if anyone's had a chance to go through the objections to the plan and all of the craziness that happened yesterday, but we did have the SEC, and it was pretty good. They were just focused on some Coinbase stuff, and making sure that if Cell token is determined as a security in bankruptcy, they just want to reserve their rights around certain things there. So that's all a good sign. But then the other thing I think people should do is remanage expectations around. I wish they hadn't given the impression that this will be public this year. I hope it is. I'd be amazed if it is. But I think that's if people are expecting that to happen, I think they may be disappointed. So I'm trying to remanage people's expectations. I hope they can pull a cat out of the bag and get this public as they say they can. One thing from my experience is when you're dealing with regulators and parties like NASDAQ, you cannot give timelines to people, because I've thought I was about to secure a license around the corner for 2 years. And then 2 years later, I was actually able to announce it. And then you're dealing with mismanaged expectations. That's a really annoying problem to crack. So yeah, just the NASDAQ thing, in my opinion and my experience, is going to take longer than people might think it is going to take. I hope I'm wrong.
Ramsey?
Yeah, this one's for you, CryptoMiami. I'm just curious because I don't really know your background too well. Do you have like experience mining, running ASICs or anything yourself?
Nope. No. Just an investor. No, I have no
Okay,
experience
gotcha.
in the real world, Mike. No, just an investor. Just following the
No, I was
stock,
just
listening to a lot of meetings, just digging deep.
gotcha.
That's going to be the other interesting thing, Michael, as well, was when all the analysts start actually doing all their stuff. So once it's public, you'll get all the whole analyst industry publishing reports and all the non-crypto people doing all their stock videos, like in those communities. That's going to be interesting to evolve.
It's a strange one, Simon, right? That's, I think, what Chris and I were sort of saying is like, it's a strange, like, out of the gate. There's no such thing as a Bitcoin miner having an ETH stack earning yield, right? I mean, it's an unusual situation. I think that people will look at that as bullish, right? That so instead of having Bitcoin that you have to sell to manage operations, we're going to have an ETH stack earning yield. So it's going to be a very unusual. It's just going to be a very unusual. I'm curious to see how they analyze it. And I've said this before, Simon, which is almost like MicroStrategy, right? Like it's going to be the only massive ETH hodl kind of on a publicly traded stock. So it's kind of an unusual scenario, right? That's the bullish case.
Yeah, and also the conflicts there, right? Because US Bitcoin is obviously going to want them to sell a stack of that and put it over to Bitcoin mining. And then you've got to do the analysis between what if we just hold the ETH, play the market, stake it, versus invest it in Bitcoin mining. That's going to be an interesting one to see how the independent fiduciaries and the audit committees try and put some numbers to that.
So,
Alex.
yes, thanks. Because we spoke about vision and where we go next, and I see Cam Cruz in the audience. Do we have any vision with the litigation trust and when it comes to FTX? That would be nice to know.
Shout out Cam Cruz.
You coming up, Cam?
I invited him. Let's see if he's around. Tony,
you can look at his Twitter. I think I won't speak for him, but if he's not coming up, I think he's very keen on the influencer clawbacks. I think he's done the analysis already. I think he's been doing a lot of on-chain stuff, and he already knows a bunch of shady shit that he thinks he can save us a bunch of fees on because he's already done the research. So I'm very excited about seeing what Cam does next. That's one of my favorite parts.
So he, as an observer,
He's a smart
guy. So he's as an observer really observes. Again, I just wanted to highlight.
No, he's on the committee. He's not an observer. He's
okay.
a decision maker.
And again, I just wanted to highlight. We all know, okay, shorting or short squeezing, whatever, it's all illegal, kind of, right? But I'm still also of the opinion that when these people would not have went in, then again, like naked shorting, what FTX did and stuff, I want to have more clarity about this. Because again, we are not better when we create something out of nothing than the traditional market. Thanks.
Hey, Cam, how are you doing, man? Cam, can you speak a bit to what's your goal and how you will approach it? Cam, are you on mute? Looks like he's reconnecting. Hold on.
And why we
Cam's
wait?
a good guy.
Yeah, and why we wait? I mean,
I can talk about constructs as well while we're waiting. But basically, there's a litigation administrator, and the agreement is in the plan supplement. So you can read the litigation administrator The person that's in charge of that, I forget his name, but he's also doing BlockFi, so there's going to be all sorts of conflict around that. Hey, Tone, did they announce the loan ad hoc member, or that hasn't been announced?
Hasn't been announced.
Okay.
Are we allowed to say?
I don't think it's public information yet. Up to you, but
I mean, does it really matter, honestly?
Spill
up
it.
to you. I'm not saying nothing.
Spill the beans.
Oh, fuck it. It's Adler. We elected Adler.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
That's awesome.
That's great.
So
So
they
you got Adler, Cam.
He's
There's going to be 7 people, I think, in total.
He's overqualified, to say the least. I mean, let's be honest here. I don't trust White and Case whatsoever. So they're going to have to clear a lot of, let's just say, conflicts with an actual attorney that knows the process.
Yeah,
so
Adler won't put up with shit as well, so that's great. And Cam won't put up with shit. So you got a solid structure there, and I think there's significant value to come back.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like the clawbacks. I mean, I'm under the 100K clawback exposure, so I'm not really at risk of anything. But I don't like coming after creditors for withdrawing their own money. I mean, the stuff that happened like a day before, 2 days before, maybe I guess kind of, but like 90 days beforehand, like, what if you're that one guy 90 days before the bankruptcy date, you just wanted to withdraw your money, like you're going to face a huge clawback now? That doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't sit right with me. But all the other stuff like Tether and whatever else like that,
Tether.
go after them.
Yo, Tony, did you notice that yesterday Bitboy outed his CFO as a $3 million Celsius creditor? Was making fun of him. Oh, he's such a loser. He lost $3 million on Celsius, his CFO. I'm like, dude, Bitboy, who came into the Celsius community, is our hero. He was going to expose everything. Good Lord.
I think it's hilarious that Cam's on the litigation oversight committee and Bitboy's on the list of. That's hilarious.
Yeah, so Cam, I don't know if you caught that, but look up Ben Armstrong's tweets from yesterday, and he exposes, I think, his CFO and his CFO's father as Celsius creditors, so with big claims. So at least that one of them was a multi-million-dollar claim.
Does Bitboy have any preference exposure himself?
Yeah, a few million, I think.
Go after it right away. Go take it back.
No, don't take his Lambo away. Come on.
Come on, man. I want it.
Leave the Lambo, but take the steering wheel.
How much did he lose
Interestingly, I
yesterday?
think it's probably the company. It's not Bitboy. I think it's so there's the whole drama there as well. Is it going to take down the company? Bitboy might try and use that as a leverage in his negotiations because he's throwing the CFO under the bus. Someone just said, right?
My question is, how did people donate $200,000 in air quote lawyer fees for him? That doesn't make any sense to me.
I think those people should be clawed back, even if they're not creditors. Yeah, I don't get it. Like, maybe it's bots, because I look at the comments, just to see like what people say, and there's so many people like, "You're doing the right thing, Ben."
I don't understand it, man. I don't understand it.
The community is supporting you. You have our, blessing or whatever. You have our full support. Come after those guys. It's just so absurd.
Yeah, it makes zero sense, bro. I don't get it. I mean, I just watching one video from him, I could already tell he was a scammer, bro.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't get it.
No better than Mashinsky, in my opinion. Rob all of us, so maybe not.
Well, I mean, he's done, you know, I don't know how many rug pulls. Like I think the Celsius litigation administrator is like the least of his worries. Part of me thinks this whole breakup and whatever nonsense is to distance himself from the company. He's going to say the company did it, and I was doing it, you know, at the behest of the company, quote unquote. But it's not my fault.
I'm so surprised though that the SEC hasn't charged him with anything yet.
He's a small fish. They're going to come after the big VC players. It looks like. Hopefully, Arrington comes up on that list, and
Oh
then
God.
and then they'll just go down the rabbit hole. You know, start with the big guys and then work their way down.
Hey Cam, how are you doing, man? Can you hear us?
Hey, Cam.
Hey Cam, can you speak a bit to what's the plan and how you will approach it?
Gabriel, we already tried 3 times to bring him up. He's still a speaker. He's watching it. Let's move on.
Sure, YOLO, my friend. What's happening, YOLO? It's been a couple of days
Hey,
since I heard your
Miami.
voice.
I think, this whole thing around Bitboy must really be orchestrated by Pesci as his revenge for Bitboy trying to, talk to him live on the live stream and showing up in White and Case's lobby and everything.
I don't think I'll ever forget that video, dude. That was something else.
I gotta say, I've not watched many Bitboy videos, but I have watched that one twice.
That was the last time we kind of that stopped all the town halls, because like right after that, Ben showed up in the town hall and they wouldn't let him speak. Remember that? That was kind of hilarious.
No, Aaron did not want to do any more town halls after that. They did one more after their disclosure statement was published.
You think that's why Pesh disappeared?
I did think that was why he disappeared for a while, but he certainly became present again on the case. But Aaron's the one that's done most of the court appearances. He may have certainly have had other matters he was dealing with, or family things. We just don't know. But I did notice the coincidental timing.
Well, he was heavily involved in the DCG lawsuit, so probably taking up more of his time, I guess.
Could well be, but but clearly Kolodny has carried most of the load in terms of the court appearances.
So YOLO, in these sort of post-bankruptcy restructuring, like, we've had such an insane 48 hours with all the drama leading up to the 4:00 vote finale. So we were all in live spaces watching this in real time. It was such like a perfect ending to the Celsius. Well, let's just say the finale of Act 2, the vote, right? So, how often do you see these deals like the falling apart, principles dropping? Maybe you can just sort of speak to the general notion in these restructurings when principles drop, things get redone in the last minute. And then maybe like something about the confirmation hearing, what we expect.
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer, not a pro at the restructurings. I think I've said many times, I've done some, but it was not my specialty when I was actively working. And this one, as we've all said, is kind of unique because it literally ensnared hundreds of thousands of, retail customers in it. And some of them are on the UCC as opposed to sophisticated, vulture bondholders who buy up distressed debt and hope to, profit from the bankruptcy essentially because they buy the debt at distressed prices. Usually the goal of the Chapter 11 is for the original company to restructure its balance sheet and emerge with the same company, basically. and then but a restructured capitalization structure, so it has less of a debt load, but and a manageable debt load. And that's kind of the normal playbook for Chapter 11s that are reorganized, like this one kind of is. The other playbook is kind of to sell off a bunch of assets, and here the only asset that was really sold off was GK8. To generate cash and shrink the business to something that is profitable and can reemerge. In this particular case, it's kind of weird. First off, because you had all these retail customers, but second off, because the business that's planned to reemerge here really isn't the business that entered bankruptcy. Yes, it's a crypto business, but it's not an earned product business. It's not a retail loan business. It's none of the things that old Celsius was. Uh, it has this mining business that was, created out of stolen customer funds as kind of the cornerstone of the operating business. It's got the staking thing, again, that's being capitalized essentially with retained customer funds, let me put it that way. That also serves kind of as the basic capitalization for the whole business, and can be allocated at the discretion of the NewCo board, where one out of the three observers looks to be on the space. Simon, I guess I don't see Joe and Brett, who are the other two observers. I don't think I see any of the actual board members, of course, but I know maybe Scott or Tom are listening. And now, we've gotten to the vote, which almost always is structured so it passes. Pass here. Tony probably knows better than me, but I don't think loans ended up rejecting. So I don't think they have to do a cram down. So now they just have to get through the confirmation hearing. A bunch of objections were filed. They have to clear those objections before they can go effective. They have to deal with all those claim forms that were filed that weren't then just withdrawn or litigated or, settled in the various vote mechanisms. And they have to, get through confirmation for the plan to get effective. Their plan is to do that essentially through October and November and have the plan go effective in December. They clearly have been trying to settle as many of the confirmation disputes as possible so that they are not, a big impediment to actually going effective. It looks like the Cell 25 thing, which was almost done, isn't quite done because Otis put something on the record that kind of shows that he intends to fight still. And so that's, one dispute that's out there. There seems to be a liquidated loans dispute. And there seems to be still not, the earned loans mediation kind of held together, but kind of didn't. And so there's certainly certain loan holders that are still fighting that issue. Did I get everything, or the main confirmation objections?
I think you did, brother.
Yes.
Yeah, and I was
The plan.
Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, the plan passed pretty easily.
Yeah, I
so
was going to say
I think
there's insiders in the room. I'm sure the plan passed already because it's been leaking. It's been leaking like a sieve up there. So, what was that,
so.
Tony?
I think there's the official vote tally is due out on the 25th, if I remember from the papers correctly. It's hard. It's hard to remember everything with now that the docket's up to, I don't know, over 3,000, maybe 4,000 at this point. But the docket has had literally thousands of filings at this point, so it's hard to remember everything that's been filed.
Did you notice the SEC filing, which seemed pretty banal? I mean, it was just minor
I
stuff.
have not. I will admit I did not read all of yesterday's filings, and I'm kind of trying to be on vacation for a few days here. But I did notice that the SEC and a number of states regulators filed. And I think there's been this whole thing with Glenn trying to draw them out so that they don't create a last minute obstacle to confirmation. And it does seem like, NewCo, basically Fahrenheit and Celsius have spent a lot of time talking to the regulators to make sure that they're satisfied that the NewCo go forward plan is acceptable regulatorily, and that all the regulatory issues with Oldco Celsius or the debtor Celsius are subordinated to creditor claims and won't hold up confirmation, like the FTC settlement of $4 billion, which was suspended so that confirmation could go forward. And then, of course, there is the issue of that the creditor claim against Mashinsky was essentially put on hold. So the Department of Justice, through the Southern District of New York, where what do they call it? The Sovereign District of New York, some people call it. Damian Woods could prosecute Mashinsky before the civil trials happened. That usually gets applause,
Excellent.
When the criminal charges get talked about.
Yippee. Can't wait. Cam is having trouble getting up, so I think he's switching to his phone. But I think we're trying to get him up here eventually.
Yeah, but even the vote thing, like, they know the votes. Like, I don't know why they do this stuff. You don't have to put it on the docket officially until Monday, but just fucking, it passed. That's it. What is that, 2 words? It passed.
Well, but yeah, they have that, but there's also they need to break out, as part of the voting report, they have to break out the cell votes, right, by class, vote the number and the value that voted in favor and against, because that determines whether or not there will be a valuation hearing on cell per what they filed in terms of the plan. There's some very, unique language added to the disclosure statement around cell. Either I think actually between the 3rd and 4th revisions of it.
I was going to say, Yolo, the SEC, Tony will comment too, but, Yolo, the SEC document really it was very short, by the way. I mean, we've been so concerned about the SEC objection, and it was basically 2 points. It was very short. It was mostly about the Coinbase custody and distribution for international clients that it had, memory serves me, because it had a trading agreement in the docket. So they were a little upset that there was potentially trading or other things that could happen. So they were questioning that, which seems like a relatively easy fix. And the other big point was regarding cell token, that they didn't want Judge Glenn, let me paraphrase this correctly, they didn't want Judge Glenn making any rulings beyond the findings of the case. Basically keep it tight findings around cell token as a security, because they didn't want that, going beyond the scope of the specifics of our case. Because of the pending litigation. That was it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I don't think Judge Glenn would. Also, is Danny on the line here? But somebody ought to take a look at the 7-monthly fee statement of Selendi, who's co-counsel to the UCC. And what I found humorous about it is the majority of the fees claimed are to basically talk about their fees. In other words, more fees were generated in writing up these fee applications than were actually generated from providing legal work advising the UCC.
Right. Well, Selendi was specific, though, right? Wasn't Selendi was for
Selendi was co-counsel. It looks like the major piece of work is that they're working on something adverse to FTX, probably the $2 billion claim. But they also worked on the Series B at one point, and personally, I always thought that they should have been, counsel on the Series B solely because of White and Clay case's conflict from doing the due diligence on the Series B, which was, in their original retention application.
Hey Cam, can you hear us now?
Yep, I can hear you. Sorry about the technical difficulties.
No problem. How are you doing, man?
Pretty good. How are you guys doing?
Fantastic. It's a wonderful day.
Please get on that 3-person subcommittee of the litigation oversight committee that actually decides who should, be pursued for clawbacks.
Yeah, I could try. Obviously, we haven't convened yet, but seems like that could be a pretty important selection, whoever those three people are.
Hey, Cam, can you speak a bit to what exactly is your plan? What are your how will you approach it, and what decision you actually can drive?
Yeah, well, I've spoken before. I think the top priorities are Tether is like the most obvious one. If we could get $200 million back from them, that would be a big win. And like they could be on the hook for something in that ballpark, right? Because they closed out a loan in the ballpark of over between $800 and $900 million right after the pause, and they were completely unimpaired. So just applying the same clawback logic, you can get to about $200 million pretty easily. And they're bragging about how flush they are with cash. So we'll see if that's the truth. And then the second biggest priority for me are the influencers. And these are people who recruited retail people to deposit funds onto the platform. And a typical profile based upon records that I've reviewed. This is not inside information. It's just there was some footnotes in the examiner's report led to some summary details on prominent influencers. A typical profile could be, say, 100 or say 1 million subscribers on YouTube, channel that size. Maybe they get 4,000 referrals, causing, say, $35 million in retail deposits onto the platform. And then many of these influencers took their own personal funds off of the platform. To me, that's just a complete dirtbag move. Like you're supposed to be an expert in this field and looking out for your followers, and you've contributed to their financial ruin. Obviously, they're not entirely responsible. Everybody has to make decisions for themselves, but they've profited at their audience's expense, and that is not the relationship that they should have with their audience. So to me, they're completely unsympathetic, and they'd be the next highest priority. Obviously, there's a lot of consternation about retail clawbacks, and it's a thorny issue. I don't think we're more or less likely by appointing the last two seats of myself and David Adler. It's something that needs to be considered. Like, we can't just join the committee and say everybody's scot-free, but we have to consider the benefits and drawbacks to pursuing them, right? We already know everybody under the 100K threshold is free and clear. At what point does it make sense to go after those claims right around the threshold? It could be that if we get the big targets locked up, it makes sense to just, wrap up shop and unwind. We don't want this going on forever. We want to be as efficient as possible, bringing back actual value to the estate. And there's obvious elements to retail clawbacks that are, they're negative situations for folks, right? So it's obviously going to impose a big, negative effect on anybody who's being targeted for a retail clawback. You can make a case that people who withdrew, especially if they took everything off the platform, wound up, and especially if they profited from their time at Celsius, if they took funds that should have been reserved for other customers. So there is a case to be made there. I know there's arguments that you could make in either direction. The baseline is that it's not going to be a worthwhile experience pursuing the smaller claims for all the pain it puts people through, unless it's going to bring real value back to the wider creditor class left behind. So that's a calculation that the committee is going to have to make, and I'm speaking on my own personal behalf. We haven't even convened the committee yet. I'd like to be able to communicate openly with folks and to help people navigate the process to the extent that people are targeted. I think it's important, though, to keep a baseline of respect for people that are serving. I initially didn't apply to the committee because, being somebody who's been pretty visible through this process, I felt like I would become a target of hate for the anti-clawback people, and I think that is a risk. But when the EARN ad hoc reached out to me this week to apply, I decided that I could make a positive difference and go after those two high priority targets that I'm actually very interested in going after. So Yeah, people can keep it cordial. I think that would help because invading expletives against people that are trying to do their best in this pretty difficult process isn't going to help things out. And I will say, quite frankly, that some of the behavior in the anti-clawback group has been deplorable, specifically when they recruited Bitboy and actively harassed the UCC. And there were some folks that came out and spoke out against his behavior. I think Plan C was one of those people. But like that type of behavior is completely outrageous. And I think you guys were talking about that specific incident earlier, like him calling up Greg Pesci live on his show as his first outreach. Like, there's no way that anybody who's trying to be a professional pulls that kind of move. He's all about spectacle. And it is interesting because discussing that case, he was in the months after the collapse and the bankruptcy filing, he did an interview with Axios whining about how he lost $3 million on the platform and he had a sizable Ethereum loan liquidated. So he's representing that those are his personal funds, and yes, it emerged that these are actually his company funds. And after Zach XBT divulged 2 Bitboy wallets, I had published his withdrawals from Celsius. He withdrew, from memory, I think it's in the realm of $2.6 million in stable coins. Might be more. He has $1.1 million in clawback exposure. Although now this is his company that's fired him, so maybe he'll be rooting for us to claw them back to help end his usurpers. But yeah, it's pretty sad that he was able to bilk his audience for another, was it 200K that he was able to get through donations? But not a particularly sympathetic character. Anyway.
Yeah, and Kim, I don't know if you noticed, because we were discussing it earlier, which is, Ben kind of outed the CFO, the Bitboy CFO, as a Celsius creditor and named him. It's a tweet from yesterday. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, well, that would be under.
Creditor,
so his transactions were traced to a holdings company, BJ Investment Holdings, which is registered in Georgia. It's run by this firm out of Chicago that deals with like crypto. I would say crypto tax shielding, at least from what I can tell. And yeah, so I think he's referring to the BJ Investment Holdings, and that link was confirmed when they fired him. Because they mentioned BJ Investment Holdings in their announcement. So,
and I'm going to ask just a very simple question, which is, just a general question about the litigation trust. So, you guys serve in an advisory capacity. There'll be the law firm. I think we can assume we know who the law firm will be. There's an administrator. What other tools do you guys get? Did they hire a blockchain investigator? So they'll have all the discovery transferred from our case.
Hey, Miami, let me correct you there. They don't actually serve in an advisory capacity.
Okay, good. That's why I asked the question. Good, yeah. What's the structure?
They're actually like the board of NewCo, in that they're the oversight committee that actually runs the litigation trust. And the litigation trust is like the CEO of the company and runs it day to day, but he reports to that litigation oversight committee and has to follow their direction.
You mean the plan administrator? The plan administrator reports to him,
Right. And so whatever law firm they hire is going to be determined at the end of the day by that litigation oversight committee. And the entire litigation trust the entire litigation oversight committee oversees the trust, including all these suits against, various parties like, the executives and other things. And then that subcommittee of 3 that is yet to be selected and can only have one of the 2 UCC members on, I believe is language. They're the ones that specifically will oversee the clawbacks, who gets pursued and what priority, etc.
Hey, Yolo. Do you know any law firm that White and Case has beef with?
I might.
If you can send me that, I might have that would be great,
I think that there are definitely other law firms that are qualified to do litigation trust work. I do think that White & Case is likely to pursue it and is the favored horse, largely because of what they're going to claim is that they're so far up to speed, past and beyond any competitor that it would be just cheaper to hire them, right? Because they're so educated on the case, from doing things like the class complaint. And probably, it does make sense to, I'm not going to speak for Cam since he actually has a duty to decide. He probably doesn't want to say what he'll do future here. But if I were on the Litigation Oversight Committee, I probably would hire them to pursue the class complaint because they compiled all the evidence behind that. Because, before the examiner's report was published, they actually had started their own investigation of what was going on. And there were certain things that were carved back from the examiner's scope of work and left to White & Case to pursue. And so I probably would have them still do that class complaint, although they can't really go after Mashinsky for a little bit. But against the other executives. But I think that the Litigation Oversight Committee will do its job and interview more than one firm for the various assignments. And I expect at the end of the day on the clawbacks, for example, that there'll be a mix of firms, those that are paid by the hour for the larger ones like Tether, and then those that are more on a contingent basis for lower dollar potential clawbacks.
Excellent. Thank you. Bonsoir, Nati. Nati, how are you, buddy?
Hello, guys. I'm good, buddy. I'm in the clouds. Just in space. How are you? I'm meeting right now. Well, we are up to date on the docket. Thank you, Simon, for posting everything. No news, no new objection, no voting report. What happened?
I think everyone's taking a break today. I don't think anything hit the docket today. Everyone's exhausted. Hey, two ones that are interesting for you, Cam. There's actually a sovereign, the Kingdom of Bhutan, which did major withdrawals within the 90 days. So coming after a sovereign is going to be really interesting. And then there's, I think, I don't know whether Equities First ended up as an asset in NewCo or whether it ended up in the Litigation Trust because they stopped paying. So I think it went over to Litigation Trust. That's cool because if it's an asset for NewCo, then we don't need to factor it in in NewCo, or actually if you end up getting the income for that, that could be a real nice thing, and that will go out directly to creditors on Litigation Trust.
Yeah, Simon, Bhutan is mining Bitcoin, so maybe we can work out a deal and they can send us their new fancy miners. You know what I'm saying?
That would be cool. Yeah,
I'm sure this is the best. I'm sure this is Bitmain's best.
600 megawatt project. I don't know where it is. Maybe it's not off the ground.
No, but that's a really good point, Michael, about just actually, rather than just these being really confrontational, shitty situations, actually coming at it from how are we going to, a bit like Core Scientific, how do we negotiate a deal that kind of works for both parties? So if we could, coming after a sovereign, how the hell do you do that? But imagine if there's a win-win in the scenario where we actually start to deploy some miners or something. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, Druk can host our 5-year-old miners in Bhutan. But it's a good idea.
It's cold and the energy's cheap, right? Dude, that would be an amazing settlement. Oh, Sharon left already. Sharon is a big proponent of mining in third world countries for cheap energy, but they'll host our 122,000 rigs, in cold with 1 cent power.
Yeah, we can create a new token and make it legal tender in Bhutan. Oh boy.
We don't need to create one. We already have the cell token.
Yeah, where are they headed? They haven't said. Cam asked the question in court, isn't it? Are they going to the burn address? I don't think we've had an answer yet.
Yeah, they pled the fifth on that one.
The Bhutan address.
Just imagine whoever will get those 658 million sell tokens on the book. Yeah. A windfall.
I think they have to go to crypto BTC.
I think that's really an interesting idea to give them to Bhutan, and Bhutan could declare them whatever they want.
It's the new currency of Bhutan.
Hey Cam, I have a quick question to you. How realistically is it to claw back insiders or influencers that are living in other jurisdictions, like let's say a Dubai or so?
That's a good question. I actually think influencers are a pretty soft target because they depend on sponsors and advertisements. And if you have somebody who's done wrong by their audience, to me, that's a pretty convenient target to go after. We'll see to what degree we want to be aggressive in that respect. But effectively, these influencers are putting out there that they're looking after their audience. And we have evidence that specifically in this case, they did exactly the opposite. And if they have clawback exposure, I think there are levers that can be pulled to go after them. Like one example would be CryptoLark, based in New Zealand. I think he has $2.4 million of clawback exposure and pulled every last penny off the platform that he could. And he didn't even announce to his audience on his YouTube channel that he was doing this. Or maybe, I don't remember the exact sequence. I think he sent to his newsletter that he was pulling out a couple days before, but he never properly alerted his audience that he recruited on. And this is somebody who collected lots of referrals as well. So, I mean, pretty disgraceful. He made one short apology video, and in the same video, he announced that he was buying more Bitcoin, which is completely tone deaf. So he's announcing to the people that he completely wrecked, that he has capital to put onto more crypto in the declining market. So to me, he's one of the worst folks that falls in that category of influencers who's a clawback target.
What about Coin Bureau, man? He was an ambassador, and I remember he warned about the sell token bullshit, and so I will categorize him in the good influencer part. Does he have exposure? What's your opinion on him? And by the way, who are the biggest targets for the litigation trust overall?
Invest Answer.
Invest Answer should be a really good one. He had tons of referrals as well. And he actually didn't have a ton on the platform. So I don't know, in the clawback respect, it might be harder to appropriately administer justice for somebody who's, I think, one of the worst offenders in terms of dispensing bad advice. There's the Invest Failure Twitter account, which I find hilarious, which, even though it's the parody of Invest Answers, it's almost more like James Malarney than the actual James Malarney in many respects. If you look at Jason Williams, he has a huge clawback exposure. He withdrew. It's actually pretty interesting with him. So he withdrew from Gemini and put out a tweet bragging about how he was withdrawing to cold storage, when in reality he was depositing into Celsius, and then he later withdrew. And this is in the ballpark of, I think, 10-figure dollar amount of Bitcoin. So, yeah, he pulled out entirely. He wasn't in Celsius for all that long, but certainly, I think it was the beginning of 2022, if my memory serves me right. But he has a huge dollar value clawback exposure. He's probably the biggest influencer, at least that comes to mind in terms of that dollar value. And he has the Twitter handle Going Parabolic. And hasn't addressed anything with respect to Celsius. But to me, the fact that you're actively misleading your audience about your own behavior is pretty shady.
Remind me of the Luna to $80,000 from him.
Oh no.
Can someone explain the Pharos holdings, the link to FTX and the Pharos holdings? What is it, 89 million? That filing that was.
Yeah, I was trying to figure that out. I just the Class 8 unsecured loan claims, but they get kind of the same recovery under the plan as the earned people, but they actually are rejected. So now you do have it where not all the classes have accepted, and so that still has to get through the court as a cram down.
Yeah, so those guys, that's like an FTX Alameda company. They had an $81 million unsecured claim, literally with nothing. They just got $81 million from us.
No collateral.
No collateral at all. Their loan was actually accepted, meaning they have to pay it back. So technically, they're not impaired. So I don't know why they even get to vote. The whole thing makes no sense.
I was saying to you, Cam, as well on that one. Speak to the Nova Wolf guys. They looked at buying that claim, and they were trying to analyze the clawback exposure of that claim, and it came with a bunch of emails that may be interesting to those that come from the FTX conspiracy theory. So there's going to be an interesting connection there for you to look at.
Yeah, and just to clarify,
well that's actually good. That's actually going to be heard, though, because it's an objection to the plan, to confirmation of the plan that was filed on the docket by Pharos. And so that's actually got to be heard to some extent during the confirmation hearing.
I think the claim was purchased, though.
Well, Pharos filed on the docket, because I was just reading this thing. I was trying to understand.
Wait a second, Yolo. There is two different entities. There is a fund SP in the Cayman Island, which has the 81 million collateral, and there is another entity on the docket, which has an earned claim. It's only 350k USD. So there is two Pharos entity. And the one which has been sold to Lantern Venture UK and another fund in the UK is a small claim. So the original 81 million has not been transferred. As far as we know, maybe someone find another transferee agreement, but it has not been purchased. And on the second thought, this is their loan is USDC, so it's a stable. So they want to fight the double haircut of the crypto distribution, so it makes sense they advocate for a liquidation in their position.
So Pharos claims that they have an $80 or $82 million claim, and it's separated from the earned claims because it's unsecured. I don't know. Earn was kind of ruled unsecured as well. And I guess I don't understand. There was also there's 55 million that was done in USDC under their master lending agreement. I'm just reading from what their filing says here, and 27 million USD also under a master lending agreement, but I guess they're separated ones.
I don't understand what they're even, what claim do they have? They just have a debt.
No, they claim that they claim that they're owed 82 million bucks.
Yeah, and the question is, how did that circumstance come about? Because it seems like they're interconnected potentially with other counterparties, which would be interesting. Because, why would you give Celsius $82 million for no reason? I guess who knows how much interest they're getting, but they basically got Celsius to buy Celsius.
But just say speak to Nova Wolf is the definition of insider clawbacks.
Okay, but they are under the plan. Whether it gets clawed back later by the litigation trust, under the plan, they're essentially treated like an earned claim, so that they would get that same 67% recovery. But they voted against that.
Maybe they know what's coming.
Watch out, Cam's coming for you. See, this is why this one's going to be so interesting, because I think in the aftermath of these transparent communications of the Celsius case. I think we're gonna figure out all the final pieces, and I think it's going to be amazing to do it all together.
So the basis of their objection, now that I finally got to it, the basis of their objection is that Series B should get nada, 0. And that Series B is getting a 0.1% recovery. Thus the plan. Thus it doesn't follow absolute priority under the bankruptcy code. That's the basis of their objection.
Sounds like I agree with them.
There is also the part about the difference between the Chapter 7 liquidation and the OWD. They claim the difference is too much to be according to the code. So that's why they champion liquidation by that.
Yeah, they were arguing that the orderly wind down would be superior, or they didn't see there was enough evidence that NewCo would deliver superior value. But I mean, I don't know that we necessarily disagree in terms of the principles. It's just, I don't know.
I think that's actually. I think that's a question that can be argued effectively, because I don't believe there was sufficient backup for the valuation of NewCo that was provided in the disclosure statement, and that you could challenge the valuation of the NewCo mining business pretty effectively once you get under the hood of it, and that valuation fight could lead to a case where the orderly wind down is valued superiorly or equivalently to the NewCo plan, and that could cause a shift. And also, there clearly has been a $17 million devaluation, not rather small, but of the NewCo plan compared to the one that was evaluated in the disclosure statement due to the reduction in contribution from $50 million to $33 million. And the orderly wind alternate bid, which may have lower fees, which also might increase recovery to creditors. So I think that there's potential merit to that.
I agree with close the land sale. If they close the land sale for $15 million, I mean that was valued at 40. That the land was valued at $45 million for Cedarvale in the bankruptcy, but the Corps put in $122 million into that site, the Cedarvale site. So we do have a new asset.
But that new asset goes to either side, right? Whether that asset exists both in NewCo and orderly wind down scenarios.
Oh, true. Got it.
Hey, it's maybe early in the morning for me, but I still picked up on that.
Yolo, you're the fucking man, brother. You are the fucking man.
Hey, Tone, you may have missed it as well. There was one objection to White and Case being released based upon breach of fiduciary duty.
We all love that one.
I'm looking at Shredder after they bombarded my email, but I got to look at that.
That one was very well written.
Who's that, Simon?
Otis.
The Otis one. Judge.
Oh no.
No, the breach of fiduciary duty. I'll find it.
Hey, Immie, how are you doing, man?
Hey, Gabe. Guys, just a quick question. So, okay, the vote happened yesterday. We all got our vote in. Simon, thanks for your I'm not going to take guidance because obviously you're not responsible, but thank you for answering questions yesterday, especially last minute. From this point, and I think, Simon, you'll have like a video after this, probably part 5 of 5, but what's the process now? Like, how do we continue driving this process forward so that we can get out of bankruptcy?
Yolo gave the summary. It's a confirmation hearing. Is the confirmation hearing drama is the next hurdle.
Got it. And when is that?
So that starts October 2nd. Actually, the first drama is, I don't know all the drama, but I did notice that September 28th is the sell token drama. And then at...
Yolo, I'm sorry, can you explain that? What does that mean?
So the case to value sell at 25 or 0 versus 81 is going to be presented on a hearing on September 28th. And you got Otis versus White and Case.
Okay.
And because the two other, Santos Caceres and Zach Wilds ended up settling, I believe, on cell 25. Then on October 2nd, you're going to have the first day of the confirmation hearing. And I think there's 3 days scheduled that week, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And K&E is going to put on its case for confirmation. And as part of that, they're going to have certain witnesses, and they've asked that the witnesses that the objectors want to, cross-examine of them, they do the cross-examination during that period so that they don't have to come back a second time. And then the case for the objectors to confirmation will start on October 16th.
Okay. And Yolo, when you say that Zach and that other person has settled, right, does that mean that they have come to terms with the court where, let's say they are benefiting, that their sell is worth more than what was supposed to be done on the petition day? Is that what you're saying?
I believe the main elements of their settlement, and they must have been published on the docket, I'm not sure I read them, are that they agreed to the cell 25 settlement treatment in the plan, which was the settlement between the debtor and the UCC, and that their legal fees will be covered, or they'll be supported by, the debtor and the UCC supporting their attorney's application for substantive contribution to the estate, covering their legal fees and expenses.
So we pay for their
and one other element, which is I believe that they are also being called as witnesses in the cell dispute, and they've agreed to testify for the debtor in the cell dispute.
Okay, thanks, Joe. I appreciate it.
I can't believe Otis is going to make me root for White in Case. I'm so upset.
I didn't get through all of Otis's things, but I'll be curious who each side puts up to explain all the back and forth with FTX and what it all means.
Yeah, they wanted to bring 2 witnesses, and they applied for an extension to be able to bring those witnesses in from White and Case's side that they think are key witnesses, but Judge Glenn didn't approve the extension. He wanted it done sooner. So I don't know if they're going to pull these witnesses off, but I'd be very curious about who they are as well.
And Simon, I'm so sorry, I didn't catch that last part. So what's going on with the FTX piece? I apologize.
Simon, did you hear Immie?
Oh, right. Sorry, yeah. In the whole cell valuation debate, White and Case want to bring in 2 expert witnesses to probably, testify around the manipulation that they did within Celsius to the token. My guess is that it's the guy that started the cell short squeeze, which was the insider, which is Ron Suppo, as a speculation. I don't have any inside information on that. I know that he started the cell short squeeze on the command of Alex Majinski, and then it was passed down through Zach, and then it was led to be a community up movement after it was presented. He wanted to do 2. White and Case wanted to bring 2 expert witnesses in, applied to the judge for an extension, but the judge declined the extension. So I'm not sure if they're going to be able to bring in those 2 witnesses in time.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying that. And then I know, we had talked about this in previous spaces where maybe it was Tecmo or somebody else mentioned that the whole, us going after FTX for manipulation or something like that, where that could bring money into the estate. Is that still something that's actively happening? And I'm sorry, Alex, Alexander, you wanted to say something, so go for it.
You bring up, again, a good point with FTX, because I'm very interested in this, and I just wanted to ask Ken. There's one gentleman whose name was Hussain Faraj, or whatever. I can send you the comments, right, who had actually a voice, like when they made a recording where they said that they analyzed a lot of stuff. And to my knowledge, also his project he was working on, they got really heavily impacted on what FTX did. So if Ken can take or establish a contact to this Hussain, whatever his last name is.
Yeah, unfortunately, I already have contact with that crackpot. But yeah, he paid for a fake article that congratulated himself and Bitboy for taking down FTX. Now, the whole notion that FTX is responsible for Celsius' collapse, that is not something that I believe in, but FTX was a shady operation and there could be damages there. We have a $2 billion provisional claim. Obviously, I support any dollars coming into the estate for whatever reason that's valid. So yeah, if we can go after FTX, then that's great. We know that they did all sorts of nonsense in terms of exempting Alameda from being liquidated, and Alameda likely had very extensive short positions. And were those short positions naked positions? Like, that would be a form of market manipulation. Now, in terms of whether that precipitated the collapse of Celsius, obviously that would cause downward pressure on the price of Cell. I don't think that Celsius collapsed because of that. I think it was more because they were insolvent and it was a matter of time. So you could say that affected the timing of the collapse, but it doesn't exonerate Celsius for losing $811 million in the bull market of 2021. Doesn't exonerate Celsius from paying out $1.36 billion more in yield than revenue. And I use the term paying out when I mean they just credited customers, because most of that yield was not able to be taken off the platform because they didn't have funds to support it. But yeah, FTX, if they can be hammered for their wrongdoings, then that would be great. The question is, to what degree do they have funds available? Because they were a sieve, right? So their funds are all over the place and not in their own coffers. So they have tons of creditors lined around the block that are looking to get recoveries. I don't know to what degree we'd be able to get much back out of that. But let's say, even if we got that $2 billion upheld, and I think that's inflated just because Celsius wanted to make the bar date, and then they're going to specify specific causes of action in more detail. But even if we got that $2 billion, like, how much of that would be payable? Would it be 20 cents on the dollar, maybe get 400 million if that were the case? And in reality, it'll probably be far less than that, but certainly worth pursuing to whatever degree we can.
Kim, can you explain, and again, I apologize if I ask questions like a 5-year-old, just because it's getting in and out just tends to be very tough to kind of follow everything. So what is your role going to be? Because I saw something posted where I guess you're going to be a part of, is it the litigation trust, or can you explain what your role might be coming up?
Sure, yeah, it's the Litigation Trust Oversight Board, and there are 6 of us that will be convening. As Yolo had mentioned, there is a subcommittee that will decide on clawback targets, so that will need to be decided. A law firm or law firms will need to be retained to pursue claims, and effectively it's being bankrolled by $50 million in order to bring a positive return back to the estate to go to other Celsius victims. So that's like the mission. And as I mentioned, like, there's certain high-profile targets that I'm more interested in pursuing. But then the downside is there could also be potentially retail targets depending on how things shake out and the decisions of the team that's assembled.
And Kim, how does, like, let's say will that group take input from Celsius, let's say the community, in terms of, hey, we think this could be a cause of action, or does that decision get made between the 6 board oversight committee members?
The decision would be by the committee members, but I personally am always open to input, so feel free to contact me if anybody has that type of input.
Got it. And this would all be for external parties, right? Like, for example, if I was a liquidated loan, I can't go complain about anything. I would have to, this would be me saying, hey, Kim, I think we should go after X, Y, and Z because of X, Y, and Z.
That's my understanding. I don't see how liquidated loans would fit under the purview of this committee.
Okay.
Unless there's some exoteric legal theory that I'm not aware of, but yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for breaking that down. I appreciate it.
Of course. Yeah.
Hey Sharon, we've got a new research task for you. Can you start exploring mining in Bhutan? That's what we'd like to see, if it's a real industry and if it's got any competitive advantage. There may be an interesting settlement coming through.
We're gonna see what their curtailment strategies look like over there.
Yolo, you have your mic on.
Pop flop, go ahead.
Flop flop. Looks like you want to say something. Let's go, brother.
Can you hear me? Testing. Yeah. And how will the budget of the litigation trust work? Is it a 50 million fixed budget, or will all the litigation funds coming in feed into that budget, and then from that budget it will feed into the litigation trust creditors? How will it work? Is it a fixed budget, or any income can be used by the litigation trust to pursue other parties?
Yeah, it's a good question. The $50 million is fixed in terms of that's all that's being allocated to start it up. There will, if clawback targets are paying funds back into litigation trust, those funds could potentially be used in a variety of ways. I would prefer it go to victims to the fullest extent possible, right? But there are going to be potentially contingency fees. So for the folks executing the legal proceedings, they'll likely get a fee depending on the arrangements. It'll be our objective to minimize those fees so the most can go back to the wider creditor class. My hope is that the $50 million will be sufficient to fund everything. And if we feel like we're no longer able to provide value to the wider creditor class, then we can hang up our hats and redistribute any leftover funds. So there's a wide range of options available to us, but the basic mission is to try to deliver value to the wider creditor class.
Thanks, Kim.
So the 50 million is not fixed, it's a maximum. I don't know at which state it's going to be decided.
Yeah, exactly. I think we'll have to assess how the litigation trust is performing, right? We don't want to just burn through $50 million if we're not bringing value back in. So I think from what I understand, there'll be a lot of effort to get this up and running because the board hasn't convened yet. We haven't yet retained legal counsel. There'll need to be quite a lot of effort to get this up and running. And then, once that starts, we'll have to assess to what degree are we successful in bringing value back in. And we'll need to hold ourselves accountable to be meeting those performance targets, whether they're formal or informal.
Cam, actually, you bring up a really good point. So if the idea of the litigation trust is to bring value in and then distribute that value to the creditors, how do you think that's going to happen? Because on the voting, right, we all had to choose between equity and crypto. So if any value is brought in, or let's say you guys do say, hey, we've done everything we can, we're going to take the rest of the funds and then redistribute it to creditors, mechanically, how does that work? Or maybe too early for that, but I'm just kind of curious on a general idea.
Yeah, well, my understanding is there's a separate entity. I think Yolo spoke of this before, that there's a separate distinction between shares in the litigation trust and equity. So you could sell your equity shares and you could still be entitled to the liquidation trust shares, is my understanding. So there's certain classes of creditors that won't be eligible. So if you're unimpaired, if you're convenience class, you're not going to get a share of the litigation trust funds. But in terms of the mechanics, I still need to learn more about exactly how those will be distributed in terms of like the frequency and the mechanism. My guess would be that this is going to be in a dollarized basis, since we'll likely be working in dollars, versus the distribution of liquid crypto for NewCo. We're getting Ethereum and Bitcoin predominantly. So so there's some details that I still need to learn. So it's I don't have a ton more information than anybody else in this call, since we're still in the early days.
These are also probably decisions of the committee. So the committee will probably decide on these things. They're not figuring everything out up front.
Right, 100%. That makes sense. And so we're so early in the process. What about the other 5 people? So it's Cam, and then who are the other 5 people that are participating in this specific litigation oversight committee?
Yeah, David Adler was put forward by the Loans ad hoc. And then we have 2 UCC members, Keith Noyes of Caverio and Mark Robinson. And I have to look at the papers for the last 2 names. But that's, I guess, 2/3 of the folks.
You said Adler is on the committee?
Yep.
That's nice.
Thanks to Tony V for hooking that up.
Yes, good.
You didn't hear it from me, guys.
As usual, Tony, this is your brother.
Also, Cam, I have a quick question.
Well, Cam, I am happy to know that you're going to be on there. I've been following you for a while, so at least one positive development that you're going to be on that committee. So I appreciate it.
Thanks, Immie.
Hey, Cam, can you hear?
Also, Simon,
Yeah.
random question:
Immie,
is Bank of the Future not hire U.S. citizens?
I think Immie can't hear me.
Yeah, Immie can't hear Gabriel, so there's a bit of an issue there.
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
Cam, I just wanted to quickly ask you, because we had some visitors in our space, and let's say like this: if any influencer that you're targeting knows that you're coming for them, would you tell them, is it better for them to reach out to you, or just sit and wait what's coming for them?
Well, I personally would encourage people to reach out. I think that's the way to come to a more amicable arrangement. So, yeah, anybody who wants to reach out, I'd encourage that. Since we're in the early days, it likely would be just preliminary pleasantries at this point. But, yeah, to whatever extent we can work something out, I think that is all to the good versus just waiting for something to happen. Because, frankly, none of these influencers have stepped forward at all in any respect, at least that I can tell. So, yeah, it would be great if they were able to reach out.
I think the biggest downside to having Cam on the litigation trust is we're not going to be able to see Helsius Network videos. Like, you got to manage how you're going to be able to do your Helsius Network confidential information. Like, I definitely want Cam there, but it was also a loss to not have him on the outside.
Yeah, I guess we'll see to what degree I'm able to continue doing that. I've been on the fence about, since Otis is fighting this cell thing, I'm kind of curious whether the discovery is completed. But there's some interesting discovery that I could potentially produce on his behalf in terms of when he first entered into Cell Token and when he started to sell his Cell Token after he declined that he'd actually started selling Cell Token. Remember, there was an inquest where Dirty Bubble Media had published that he had withdrawn 1.3 million Cell into FTX, and he declined to clarify why he did this, and he drug it out for over a week and then demanded a trial by Spaces, at which point he triumphantly said that, no, I did not sell the Cell that I deposited on FTX, the exchange that I love, because I, Otis Davis, love to use FTX. It's a great exchange. But he then redeposited his Cell tokens into Celsius under a new account, and that was his big gotcha, where, I mean, basically Dirty Bubble Media was completely accurate with their analysis. 1.3 million Cell was indeed transferred from Otis Allen Davis through FTX into Otis Davis, the Jamaican account. So that was interesting. But then subsequent to that October 2022 confrontation, he actually started to sell some Cell on Uniswap in one of the wallets that's linked to him. So a little bit embarrassing, especially when he's accusing other people as if they happened to hold Cell that they would have dumped it, which is kind of funny because he literally did sell. And he sold for an average price of 85 cents from at least the transactions that I was able to pull. So somewhat undercuts the $3 that he was lobbying for. But anyway, I figured I would just share that on this call since maybe we won't be doing the Halcyon video on him. TBD.
We have speaker request. Nati, go ahead. Sorry.
That's fine. And Michael, what do you know about BitDR? I just read some information about Bhutan. So they are said by a Euronews article being mining Bitcoin in secret since 2017 bull run. And now the big news is BitDR. Yeah, go ahead.
No, that was our joke earlier. Well, we've been talking, I mean, Tony and I have been talking about sovereigns mining Bitcoin. You know, the hash rate is so high that, you know, we've all been assuming that there's sovereigns mining Bitcoin. We were just making the joke with Cam that we can make a settlement with Bhutan.
There is a truth behind it.
No. The joke is they have a large preference claim. So maybe they can host our miners, or maybe we can do a settlement and get some of their new fancy miners for us. That was just the joke. We're going to take Bhutan's miners in exchange for settling their preference claim.
That's a joke, but there is a reality behind, which is news that they want to do 500 million mining gig with BitDR, and they are set to start. In the article I just pinned in the nest, their goal is to start in September, so it's already now a 100 megawatt facility. So I don't know what they are doing, and they are just starting to raise funds with BitDR. But BitDR is a Nasdaq company, which is a cloud mining. I don't know about BitDR.
Yes, we're going to get Cam and Keith Walford to lead an invasion into Bhutan to try and settle the deal.
We need Ronan to command that.
Yeah.
Hey, Wannabe, how are you doing, man?
Hey, what's up, gentlemen?
What's up, man?
How's everybody doing? Hey, congratulations, Cam. I know I told you. I think you're great for the role for the litigation trust. I know I let you know what my opinions were about having creditors on the board and how I didn't think it was important or really relevant, and how I thought it was being blown out of proportion by everybody here. But that's not important, or why I came up here. I used to be a debt collector for the Department of Education. Prior to COVID, I was a manager before that all blew up. So everybody was talking about the litigation trust. So I don't know if maybe my prior experience as a debt collector might add some value. So that was the only reason I came up. But yeah.
Yeah, that could certainly be valuable. I think we will be collecting some debts. So the skill set would slot in nicely.
Yeah, so I guess...
Have you ever collected debts that were as a result of bankruptcy judgments?
No, so I guess that's kind of the unique thing, obviously. My experience was unique in that it was, defaulted student loan debts, and the business, the company that I worked for did have other debts that we collected on, like credit cards and other stuff. People that were in bankrupt, we can't collect on, right?
Except for student loan debt, right? That's not dischargeable amount.
But when they're in the bankruptcy status, we can't collect on them until the bankruptcy has been discharged, and then we can resume collections.
Fair enough. But you never did these kinds of clawback collections, right?
Correct. I never attempted this specific type of collecting on this type of a debt. But I would say that collecting on any type of a debt in the U.S., the procedures are going to be the same. We as debt collectors have to follow the same laws.
No, not quite, because collecting on these preferences actually requires the debt's not well established, right? Until there's a judgment from the court, so you actually have to sue the person who supposedly owes the clawback in their personal jurisdiction, and they're entitled to a jury trial on every single one if they fight.
So that's the problem. Exactly. That's the problem that I've been hearing. So exactly. So the debt hasn't even been established yet, right? Is that what we're saying? Is that the clawback, the preference claim it's not even an actual debt
correct.
yet?
There have been no rulings by the bankruptcy court on that. And if they actually filed, as I understand it, is very complicated stuff, right? As I understand it, if they actually filed a claim form, then they did consent to the jurisdiction of the bankruptcy court in New York. So they only have to, sue them in New York. However, if they didn't actually file a claim form, you have to go after them in their native county to actually initiate the action. I mean, if they just say no to the demand letter, you can't. That's not a debt yet. You have to actually, create an action, which is why I think the preference avoidance settlement threshold, which I'm under that $100,000 threshold for full disclosure, as Simon would say. So I'm under the 100,000. That's why it was set, because it's just not economical to go after people that are that low in terms of the amount collectible.
Wow. Okay. Well, that throws a wrench into it. That's incredibly interesting and makes it quite the hurdle, right? I guess quite the challenge for Cam.
Well, but I think that's why Cam, wants to go after these well-resourced and improper beneficiaries of the victims, i.e., the influencers who got the more victims involved in it, but made payments off of that, and sees that as.
And I'm sorry, I see somebody has their hand up. I didn't mean to interrupt. I see somebody has their hand up down there.
No, it's all good. Wannabe. Hey, Pop Flop.
Yeah, because Bhutan, reminded me of the kind of the difference in clawback types, right? You have these mega clawbacks, and you have then smaller clawbacks. Okay, they're higher than 100K. But maybe a question to Cam: How do you see do you see them as one big group, or do you see them as every person is a special case, wherever they are, and how much money they withdraw, like normal course of business? How do you see it working? Will you propose to certain groups new things? Because I did plead, I mailed the UCC a few times, and I sent messages. I said, look, if you're more transparent in the communication before the vote, more people might be willing to be flexible and be reasonable and understand more the whole process, so they understand, how does 27.5 relates to the next steps, and that's very, very unclear at the moment.
Yeah, I think there's a variety of circumstances, and I'm hoping that we can find subgroups to classify certain creditors to make it manageable, because if we deal with an individualized basis, it's going to be overwhelming. But there are a lot of different permutations of circumstances that people find themselves in, and we may need to adjust the approach. Like somebody had filed, I don't know the docket number, somebody was at exactly the 100K threshold, and they rightly felt it was unfair that if they had withdrawn like $1 less, that they wouldn't have been subject to clawback exposure. And if you get to the edges, you kind of reach those points where it feels very unfair that you're being targeted over a very inconsequential difference in terms of the action that you took. So these are questions that are going to need to be struggled with by the Oversight Board. And I don't have a good answer for that circumstance right now, other than, that claim would be in the lowest priority queue in terms of those that we'd be dealing with, because we'd want to prioritize higher value targets and those that are most comfortable clawbacks. But yeah, I think whatever degree we're able to work out deals, I think that would be to the benefit of everybody.
Yeah. Kim, because this is also an issue, right? And I do understand, it makes sense what you're saying. You will go after the biggest ones first. But on the other hand, people will stay hanging on, waiting for the situation to be resolved while you're dealing with these mega cases, and that might take years, right, to finalize the bigger ones. And nobody wants to be in Helsius for another 3 years or 4 years until all the big cases are resolved. How do you see that working?
Yeah, I'd like to try to have things move as expeditiously as possible and not have people on the hook. And ideally, this is just, I'm speaking in my own personal capacity, but I would personally like to get a lot of wins under our belt and get these claims cleared by potentially offering more attractive deals for people that are willing to make a deal. To me, that would be a smart move. Again, I don't know if we'll take that approach, but trying to clear cases as quickly as possible would be my own personal preference. And, the committee or the board will have to convene to determine how it views claims that are lower down the threshold. But I think you're correct in that we don't want a situation where people are on the hook for years with this sword of Damocles dangling over their head. It's just not a good situation to have people in. So I'd like us to be able to move quickly as possible. And to your point of viewing people either individually or as one whole, if we're able to come up with common cases and offer certain settlement deals for folks that are willing to come to the table, I think that would be beneficial. One advantage is if you have funds in your possession that people are asking for, that is to your advantage, right? Because you possess the funds that are being requested. You might be in a little bit worse of a negotiating circumstance if you have a claim being held by the estate because they hold funds that could offset the claim. So there might be different circumstances there in terms of negotiating deals. But yeah, I'm just, again, speaking out of my own personal capacity, but I do think folks that are willing to be reasonable, I think would probably go a long way. But then the board will have to also come up with a framework for how to make these deals go through. And that is yet to be determined because, again, we haven't convened as of the moment.
Hey, so Cam, what do you think about the coercive tactics that the debtor is employing here, where regardless of the amount of your clawback exposure, if that's over $100,000, unless you agree to the 27.5%, you're not getting your crypto back. Even like, let's say you had $1 million in crypto and your clawback exposure, which is trapped, and your clawback exposure is $200,000. Unless you agree to give that 27.5% of the $200,000, you're not getting any your 67% recovery on your million until that's resolved.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly playing hardball. I don't like the fact that they're using that to coerce people to vote for the plan. I think people should be able to be free to vote for the plan based on whether they think it's good or bad, right? Because you're compelling people that might be opposed to the plan to vote for the plan because their own personal circumstances would be affected.
You're actually compelling people to take the 27.5% to free up the rest of the crypto without getting due process on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly an aggressive tactic. I suppose, the advantage of that would be, to the extent people take it, it clears those cases and brings value back for other creditors. But I can understand people not enjoying the fact that they're not able to put their case forward under that framework.
Well, yeah, my problem is I just think it's wrong, because if their total deposit is more than their withdrawal preference exposure, they ought to be able to take money that's above their withdrawal preference exposure, not the 27.5%, but anything that's in excess of 100% of the world withdrawal preference exposure, they should get recovery on, because there's no chance of recovering that, right? The only fight is over how much of that withdrawal preference exposure gets paid back. And even, if they pay it back, they're still going to get 67% of that, right? Because they did a claim for the amount that gets clawed back. So I just think that that's wrong. My 2 cents worth that you can take to the rest of your committee.
Yeah, I make a point.
I have another question. So some people did not transfer their claims to the litigation trust. So what would happen for let's say Bhutan? Yeah, could Bhutan be in the case where the litigation trust pursue him for the clawback, and then a third party, which has not transferred their litigation trust claim, pursue him? I know they had to put this in the claim form, keeping in mind that the professionals who bought the claims, they're very aware of this, and I guess some of them did, right? Because they're pros and they're kind of ready for these situations. It's not very clear if it's settled with the litigation trust, it's settled with all the parties. Yeah, this is very confusing for me.
Yeah, I'm not very clear in terms of how that will shake out at the moment myself, because there's nothing stopping if you didn't contribute your claims. In theory, you could pursue Bhutan through another avenue. So I suppose if there was a settlement, it could be distributed through some end route as well. But yeah, the idea of contributing claims to litigation trust was that just group them together to allow this entity to bring value back to you without you having to go and pursue it yourself. So that was the general idea. But yeah, it'll be interesting for folks that didn't contribute their claims, what their plans are, because I haven't heard from folks that took that route in terms of what they're looking to do.
So Ken, my perspective is more from the clawback rather than clawback, right? So if you're subject to clawbacks, you don't know where your exposure will stop. Because if you settle with the litigation trust for X amount, Simon Dixon has not transferred his litigation trust claim to the litigation committee, and he might even come to other people who clawed back and say, look, you owe me because I have a claim on you. So it's very unclear, this part, and it's open-ended, right?
Whoa. That's I don't think right. So because Simon hasn't transferred his claim to the litigation trust or anybody else who has it, that doesn't mean that they then have a claim against somebody else who hasn't done that, or that they don't have ownership in the litigation trust. The litigation trust still owns all those claims because those were transferred to them from the debtor, right? And so the debtor transferred the claims to the litigation trust, who then has the right to prosecute whatever they want to prosecute. That Cam and his buddies say, hey, go after those people, whether it's a clawback or anything else. And then everybody who is an earned creditor, or the excess collateral and borrow, etc., everybody but convenience and custody are the owners of the litigation trust, regardless of whether or not they transferred their individual claims to the litigation trust under question 11. I think that's the right interpretation. So
I hope so. I hope so, because people want to settle once, and that's it. They don't want to be sued again and again by 20 million people. By 20 people.
Yeah, whether you contribute to the litigation trust or not has nothing to do with who owns the claims. The litigation trust owns the claims that were transferred to it from the debtor, and as other elements of the plan transfer claims to the litigation trust.
Yeah, Cap, another one to consider as well is because my counsel advised me that there were certain reservations I needed to do there. But probably once this is all settled and the dust is settled, people would probably be willing to transfer those claims once they've figured out a bit more. I did that because I just didn't have time to figure out all the pieces. But I'd be more than happy to contribute it once I've actually figured out all the pieces.
Yeah, so Simon, I that was something that was unclear to me, right? Whether or not, if you elected not to contribute on the ballot, could you change your mind and contribute later? And so your lawyer told you could, is what it sounds like. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know if we can, but that would probably be something that the committee could consider, because I just didn't have time to figure out all the moving parts because I was just doing too much in one go.
So I got because I asked that question directly of both White and Case and Kirtland. White and Case chose not to respond. Kirkland gave me an ambiguous answer that said maybe.
Yeah, well,
we don't know if there'll be an opportunity to transfer it afterwards, after the ballot.
I mean, it makes sense that if there haven't been actions taken in that class of claims, that the litigation trust would want to be able to receive them. It just becomes, I guess, an administrative exercise. But then, I guess, after claims of that type are being executed, then it might be a bit late to be of use. So there's probably a timing element and an administrative element. But in general, it would make sense to try to get as many of those claims under litigation trust as possible. At least is the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I agree. And was it Pop Flop that asked that question that started the dialogue here?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so Pop Flop, the big difference in terms of whether or not, you transferred your claim to the litigation trust, and I think it was item 11, very confusing ballots, I'm probably wrong on that, but let's call it item 11, is that if you transferred your claim, then you don't benefit from the successful prosecution of it, assuming it is successful. The benefit of that goes to everybody because it goes to the litigation trust and then to all the owners of the litigation trust. If you chose to keep the claim and not transfer it like Simon did, then if you actually prosecute it on your own, hire the attorneys and not let the litigation trust do it, but you hire your own attorneys, go after it, pursue it, and win, you get to keep that recovery. You don't share it with anybody else. That's the big difference.
But that's the point. That's the point of CryptoYolo, right? The claim, you can have two claims against the same person. One from the litigation trust and one from another one who kept that claim. So when it comes to the clawback, right? You're settling
clawback. You don't have a claim for clawback. You individually do not have a claim for clawback against anybody. The only person that has a claim for clawback against anybody is the estate. Your claims, the claims that are being talked about here are the claims that you filed on your claim form that are the non-coin claims. Remember when everybody was saying, oh, we should file something so that we can make sure the Series B gets something. So if you filed something on the claim form that was a non-coin claim that isn't covered by the class complaint that you probably opted into to get the 105. That's the claims we're talking about, whether or not they were transferred or not to the litigation trust.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Thank you.
So, for example, I had all these fraud claims against people, right? Each of the directors and officers and securities fraud, whatever, anything I could think of. I put those on my non-claim form, right? And so if I don't donate those to the litigation trust, maybe I can find Simon and Cam and some other people who didn't do that as well, and we could hire somebody to pursue similar claims as a class action kind of thing, and pursue it that way. To pursue them individually, unless you're a big wheel like Simon, doesn't make sense economically.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you. Thank you, Yolo.
Yeah, I'll also say mine was ultra complicated because we were Series A shareholders, and they're pulled together in non-discretionary SPVs where we don't have authority to vote on behalf of the shareholders. So we can only take the action that the individual shareholders want to take. And the individual shareholders were mostly Celsius customers. So, my individual situation was 100% unique to circumstance. And then I'm the director of a company, and that company is the director of an SPV. I just couldn't unwind it in time to figure out what I wanted to do. But once I have figured that all out, and our counsel's on it, but if that's the right thing to do, then I'd be more than happy to contribute to it. I just couldn't figure it out in time.
Cam, another maybe question, just shooting from the hip here again. Do you think 27.5 is the floor, or is that just a floating figure and it can start higher or lower in the negotiations? How do you see that working?
So that originated from the custody settlement. So that was effectively like the precedent established. So custody was recognized as having title to their coins, but they are only getting back the 72.5% into installments, and they've received the first so far, at least those that withdrew the first installment. So you could argue potentially, if you're subject to clawbacks and you happen to have the coins in your possession, that you're in a better position than people that were in custody who, while they had their title recognized, they didn't have physical possession of the coins. Because currently the same deal is being offered to both of them. So I would think that you would be in a slightly better circumstance actually having possession. So potentially there could be some sort of avenue to work out a better deal there. But yeah, that would be the floor in terms of that's like the worst case scenario, unless there could be more of a cudgel for people that aren't willing to come to the table, because theoretically the claim is for the withdrawal preference exposure is for the entire amount that's withdrawn. So there could potentially be like hardball tactics for people that aren't willing to make a deal, but I don't personally find that particularly attractive. In terms of the deal, that would be the floor, though.
Thanks, Cam. It's good to hear that, there's a very reasonable person on the other side of the table. That's very good.
Yeah, sure, Plop. And I'm hoping that, like, the value that I can bring is also being able to communicate at least my thoughts to the wider public, because I've found it very frustrating through this process when the people making decisions are unavailable to answer questions. And even if I'm only speaking on my own personal capacity, at least to some degree, it might be helpful being 1/6 of the people on the oversight board.
Yeah, I think the key move is that you structure this in such a way as you align the incentives of the lawyers that of your mindset, right? Because if the lawyers if the incentives of the lawyers are, as the longer it takes, the more they get paid. We saw how that works. Or the bigger the more funds they recover, the higher the compensation, which is slightly changing from what I understand your mindset as being gone. That's key, I think. That structure is very, very key, because then the process will work on its own, basically.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And there could be a variety of ways to ensure that we're moving in a time-expedient way. It could be that if the board or rather the litigation trust isn't meeting performance targets, then it's time to unwind, right? So we need to be delivering value. Otherwise, what's the point? We can't just be paying lawyers without delivering value. And you raise a really excellent point. Like, we've seen firsthand through Chapter 11 that the longer this goes, it works to the benefit of the professionals to our detriment. And I wonder, could this process have been accelerated if they got a $100 million bonus for finishing it in 9 months? I mean, that would be a pretty quick time frame, but or if they got a $100 million penalty for dragging us out a year and a half. I think people react to the performance targets, and unfortunately in Chapter 11, they're all getting paid by the hour, and we've been on the hook for an internal period that is looking to extend potentially into the early next year.
I think you figured out what to do with the cell token treasury.
Pay the attorneys.
Yeah,
1 million for each
performance for the litigation trust. I think Cam has to take 100% proceeds and sell treasury.
Yeah, it could be a cell whale.
That would be.
But Simon, you did tokenize a previous litigation trust, or kind of, no, before in your other recovery. It was similar.
Oh, we did, Bitfinex. We did a recovery right token, and it's now paying out. It's in the money. So it took 7 years, and the DOJ just found 100,000 Bitcoin. Part of that goes to the recovery right token holders, and a bunch of people just sold them. But a bunch of people, like someone would, because as time goes on, people were like, screw this, let's just sell it. But there was someone that had a bid on the, and they were accumulating them like crazy, and then they came in the money. We did the whole thing with Bitfinex via a security token. So there was the IOU token, which obviously was extinguished once the debt was repaid. And then the recovery right token was entitlement if the funds were actually recovered. It was pretty cool.
Hey, Simon, I have a quick question. Do you know when the coins, like the Liechtenstein coins, when they will be distributed roundabout? Do you have any idea?
Liechtenstein coins? What's that?
Yeah, Bitfinex, the Bitcoins. No, it's Liechtenstein.
Well, I mean, there's an interesting, and I'm just going off public information, so I'm not talking about anything that I know as a shareholder, just the public docs. But, we all know that Bitfinex also has an ongoing DOJ case that was settled, but they've got like DOJ that wants to come after them at the same time as DOJ that has helped them, and it had to cooperate in recovering the lost Bitcoin. So if the justice system works, does that mean that the left hand and the right hand are put together and they try and keep all those Bitcoins for even though they belong to token holders and victims, or do they treat those as very separate cases? And that's an interesting one. Could they really actually try and settle and use those funds? It's kind of like the clawback situation where you've got actually the funds on the account. I wonder if DOJ treats it that way. I've got no idea what they do there, but and they just take ages with these things. And that was one of the most interesting part of the Mt. Gox case, because they only had 10% of the Bitcoin, and then they ended up with a bunch of Bitcoin cash. And then because it took so long, they did a 10x on the dollar value of the insolvency, and And yeah, it was just so interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. Oh, there's so many bitcoins still held by governments and in court
the
cases.
DOJ is one of the largest Bitcoin holders, right? Behind Satoshi.
Yeah. That will be interesting when they hit the market.
I remember when they auctioned off the Silk Road ones. I think was it Draper that bought them for $600? Yeah, and I remember it crashed down to $200, and all the memes were like, you bought all those for $600. But they still haven't moved, so you held them.
Oh, wow.
Before he lost the keys.
Hey, Immie, what's up, man?
Actually, I had a really good question. I know a part of NewCo is going to be ETH staking. Is that right?
ETH self-staking.
ETH self-staking. So, Simon, what does that mean in terms of like an annual yield? Do we have estimations on what that's going to look like on an annual basis after management fees?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, there's a website you can go to just to look up ETH yield. It's just based upon certain parameters, how many people are using the chain. It's pretty simple, but it's like 5%. But then it's paid in ETH, so you've got whatever happens to ETH plus 5% ETH on ETH.
But they're not using a part of the Ethereum to self-stake as a part of NewCo's business model?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'll be very interesting to see how they handle, because you've got the committees, which are all and the independents, which are all TradFi people. And my experience at TradFi, because basically, Bank to the Future, we were a Bitcoin business. We never secured VC funding because we basically earn about 30% of our revenue in dollars and 70% of our revenue in Bitcoin. And we figured out how to build the business just on the 30% of dollars and keep all the Bitcoin. So we kind of did a Michael Saylor, but a private version. And that was the whole thing we did. Now, if I had listened to the TradFi people, they would always have advised us to sell those Bitcoin. Now, that's the dilemma with a Bitcoin mining company. You're always trying to hold the Bitcoin, but when the economics go wrong over that 2-week period, when the hash rate, the difficulty rate adjusts, you're trying to figure out how to not sell your Bitcoin, but then you have to pay your electricity, and it's really capital intensive and low margin. So now you've got a double whammy, which is you've got ETH locked up. It takes about 2 weeks to unstake ETH on the Beacon chain. And then you've got your yields being generated in ETH. So how much are they going to hold in ETH? And then a proposal comes through from the Bitcoin mining side, and they say, yeah, we need 89 million in order to build out this operation. There's going to be a really interesting treasury management side to this. And also you've got the new GAAP accounting rules that allow you to mark up the unrealized gains in Bitcoin coming in 2025, which will have a significant impact on valuation. Because at the moment, MicroStrategy can only mark down their Bitcoin position, but they can't mark it up like international financial reporting standards. So then you've got that, and then that pays into the quarterly report. So just from a geeky standpoint, I'm really quite interested to see make sure that the board has that combination of like crypto, Bitcoin, and TradFi people to figure out some of those very unique challenges of an ETH company and a Bitcoin, a proof of work and proof of stake company. It's going to be fascinating.
I agree with you, Simon. That's one of the things that was so interesting to me about the ETH staking. I did have a question. You made a comment, I think it was a couple hours ago, regarding like something about Back to the Future APIs and like the ETH staking. Could you expand on that comment a little bit?
Yeah, so one of the issues with me being a board observer that came out in the interview was conflicts of interest. So I had to do a lot of work on disclosing all my conflicts. And then I had to sign forms under perjury of the court, if that's the right way of saying it. And so obviously conflicts is a massive part. And then you got insider trading and all those other things. So we had to do quite a lot of work on that in the interview process and disclosures and stuff. And so what I got board sign off on the Bank to the Future level for was that because we do international ETH staking as a service, as a security, and as a virtual asset service provider, there's not the same level of clarity, so you can't do that in the US yet. But we're a non-US business, and our investors want us to stay non-US. So one of the things I initially said is that if NewCo gets the regulatory permissions and also is able to develop a secure API, then we'll switch the back end of our ETH staking service at Bank to the Future over to NewCo, so then we can align our interests, because it's a big strategic goal of what we do at Bank to the Future. So I just wanted to align those interests, but there's regulatory hurdles initially, because they won't be able to do ETH staking as a service, because no one can do it right now without the SEC objecting at the moment. So yeah, that's just something I wanted to bring to NewCo, because that could be a nice revenue stream on the international side without necessarily some of the regulatory hurdles, but we'll see. It's up to the board if they want to do that.
Thank you for going over that, but I guess this is what I'm not understanding. I thought that ETH staking was a part of the business of the NewCo, in addition to the Bitcoin mining. So you're saying that self-staking model is not going to be able to get up and running?
No, they can't. So what Bank to the Future does is, if a customer wants to benefit from ETH staking, then we sell it as a security with all the disclosures, and then they can receive yield, in compliance with securities laws. That's one of the reasons what we were trying to work with Celsius. But that's the whole thing that went wrong. But the NewCo can't do that. They can't offer customers ETH staking. Part of the FTC settlement, from my understanding, was that Celsius is not allowed to pass on the customer relationship and offer the same, business, because ETH staking as a service is considered a security in the US. So the way that they got around that is they said, well, we'll put the ETH on our balance sheet. The coins belong to NewCo. We'll give everyone equity, and we'll just stake our own ETH, and that will be the company's ETH. It's not like a user interface where they're offering it to customers. So they have the back-end infrastructure to stake their own ETH on their balance sheet. And that's very different to what we offer. We offer customers that want to stake. But we use another company as a back-end infrastructure, and we could transfer that over to NewCo if the board decided that was a good way of aligning interests and bringing in additional revenue, and it was compliant.
But Simon, good question. Is the main issue the custody aspect? If you could basically do the ETH staking but in a non-custodial way, would that make it easier in terms of regulation if it's non-custodial?
Not yet. US and ETH staking, offering it via a company, that's a big thing that's going to figure itself out over the next 2 years. And I think they're going to be required to have special purpose broker-dealer licenses and virtual asset registrations. And I think the SEC just approved their first special purpose broker-dealer. And if NewCo is interested in becoming a special purpose broker-dealer and offering such services in the US, may take about a year or two, but that would be an interesting direction to diversify the services into the future. I think NewCo could lead in that field. As a NASDAQ company with self-staking, get the special purpose broker-dealer and start offering it as ETH staking as a security. I think that's an interesting thing if the board are interested in pursuing that.
Thank you, Simon.
Yeah, interesting conversation today. Yeah, ETH staking. I like it, obviously.
But I'm more interested in like a non-custodial approach, where people actually, they don't give up the custody of their coins. So they still keep the full custody of it. And you just provide the service, the interface service.
Yeah, that's probably not the market for that's the crypto people, but there's a market of people that just want the yield and don't want to deal with all the shit. That was kind of the Mashinsky pitch, I guess.
That's
but
yep.
Hopefully we can do this one right.
No, you're 100% right. That's the exact reason I put my ETH into Celsius, because I was waiting for them to do staking as a service, and then on top of that, there was discussion of the insurance product. So I thought it was going to be a fail-safe, and, here we are.
Not your keys, not your coins.
Ain't that the truth? Or Coinbase. I should have just stuck with Coinbase.
Or you should have bought Hex, I'll tell you in the comments. Only joking. Please don't.
I'm going to do that right now.
Didn't just close the X Maxi, Simon. Mexican.
Someone's going to take out the clip, isn't they?
Richard out of shit.
That's right.
But more seriously, it's very good. Decentralized company and the subject of the regulation and the Security Exchange Commission. And the way NewCo, if successful, can be a model of compliance with security rules, staking as a service. So besides the shareholder recovery, there is a subject to make crypto and security service mainstream and compliant. This is with 4.2.0 and so on. This is a real subject.
Yeah, I think NewCo is really well positioned to do that. Just stabilize the mining, stabilize the model, get the governance right, make sure the board is stable and everyone's performing and everyone get the management contracts right. And then within a couple of years, they got to diversify away from some of the challenges with mining and create a business that's going to work long term. And also diversifying from US, I think, is important as well, having international pay.
Did you find the person who objected to the plan regarding the UCC fiduciary duty? I think it was also about the appointment of certain person of the board, especially the gentleman from Perella Partners.
I'll look for it and pin it. Oh yeah, that's the one. That's the one. Did you read that one? Yeah.
Yeah, I read that one. I had it in mind, but I don't remember who is it. There is a creditor paying me the Victor Uberna objection, but he basically object on Kirkland and Ellis ground regarding the inconsistency of the EIP program.
So that's a different one.
Yeah, that's a different one. Even if it's legit, but that's not the one.
I put them all in the Celsius community group. I'll try and find it.
Yeah, right. Thanks.
Hey Cam, did you record this one? I think there was a mountain of information people would benefit from.
I was trying to record some, but not sure if it succeeded or not. I was having computer issues and then switched to my phone, so I'll have to see if anything got recorded or not. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry, someone asked it. Usually I don't record spaces, just because I believe people feel more freely to talk.
No, definitely, but I think this one actually had a trove of information for people.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, don't bother, record the next time. This is public square.
You guys are all welcome by the amazing questions that I asked. It's okay. There's no need to thank me. No need to thank me.
Yeah, thank you, me.
I do what I can. I do it. Simple-minded people like me just need things to be broken down.
It definitely feels like the calm after the storm, and then everything's going to go crazy again next week. What do you reckon?
So you're expecting the next shit show already?
Oh, I think there's a lot of shit shows still to come, yeah. But it definitely felt like a real relaxing milestone, just getting past that voting deadline. I feel a lot more calm and refreshed for some reason. And I thought I was going to not do anything to do with spaces, and then I found all you guys on the stage, and it's like this really weird addiction. Like, I got a problem, a space is a problem, I think.
We are your rando internet buddies.
That was the best part of this case. It was the friends that came from it, I think.
Simon, I was actually a little worried because I think, 4 days ago, you were on a space and you sounded really down. And I was like, oh shit, if Simon's down, what's going to happen?
Yeah, that was leading up to the final moment, I was going to vote no on the plan. There was the last 2 weeks were really, really horrible for me. I didn't enjoy them at all. Not my idea of fun at all. And I was really sleep deprived and feeling quite intimidated and feeling a massive burden and sense of responsibility. And I was just going back and forth around what's the right thing? What have I got to do here? And it just kept changing. So it was a really hard 2 weeks, the last couple of weeks. But I think all the right decisions were made in the end.
So, Simon, when everything is done, will you make a big fire in your garden where you throw all this pile of paper into it?
Yeah, well, I got to think of something more productive to do with that. It's got to be recycled,
Fireworks, blow it up and all that kind of stuff.
I don't know how to stop them. Yeah.
Oh, man. Hey, thanks to the king of Rio. How are you doing, man?
Hey, good. Hey, thanks for bringing me up. Hey, I just want to ask Simon, how's your mental health, man, after this? You've been like a machine. People have been falling off and getting back on and falling off, at least for me. I don't know how you did it, man. What did you do? What was the secret for your mental health to get through all this?
Adderall.
Yeah, do you want to know the secret? The secret is that if this wasn't such a horrible experience to so many people, this is the type of shit I do for fun. And so that was the secret for me. Like I love learning new things, and this was a mountain of learning. So for me, that's what kept me going. It was just the growth of continually learning throughout this whole process. And so that kind of counterbalanced the horrific side of it. And then I got to say, it was the community. It was it was everyone. It was just the whole dynamics of this thing of solving it together. That was just really, really interesting.
Yeah, you did an amazing job. I think I was on the space where you talked some guy down from the ledge. He was having a difficult time and think about ending it all and stuff. And that was pretty amazing, man. Spaces. So I'm sure you've had a lot more of those experiences, but man, it's been pretty crazy.
Yeah, who was on that? Was anyone else on that one? That was rough. That one. That was.
No, I missed that one.
Simon, easily the best one was I think I could have sworn he was the Russian guy, and he was like, in Mother Russia, this is what we would do to Mashinsky, and you're like, yeah, let's get past that. We don't advocate for violence. Okay, next caller.
Yeah, and Chrissy Mashinsky used that against me, like that I'm inciting violence against her family.
Oh my gosh.
She took the clip out and then said that I'm like hiring the Russian mafia to take out her family, and then she said that everyone needs to come to me to get back their coins, and that I stole everyone's coins, and the SBF has paid me, and I remember.
I don't want to say it was funny, Simon, but it was pretty damn funny.
It was funny, yeah.
Yeah, this exercise was for sure interesting.
Also, if that guy's listening, I'm just joking. I'm just joking.
So I found the objection, Simon. This is Rick Phillips. You made a community message. I pinned it in the nest.
That's the
And
one.
this
Yeah,
is,
that's the one that Tony will be interested in.
and so he sent mail to the UCC saying that they appointed Emmanuel Edu, which is an employee of Perella, and Perella is a financial advisor of White and Case in this case. So obvious conflict of interest, in fiduciary duty, quid pro quo. So that's it.
Yeah, it was really well worded.
Man. Hey Scott, how are you doing, man?
Hey guys, how's everything going?
Fantastic. What you got for us?
Great. Listen, I just listened to a comment that Simon and another gentleman were talking somebody off a ledge. You know, I had my struggles during this whole thing, and listening to Spaces was helpful, but also very emotional. And appreciate you, Simon. You did a lot of good for a lot of people. I'm an older guy, about 60. I got a couple young kids, still in middle school, and one in elementary. And I was hoodwinked terribly by Celsius. It was my savings in crypto. That's why we're all here, right? And you know, I actually spoke to Simon yesterday, that space that you had about voting and about the clawbacks. And when I got my clawback exposure, I misinterpreted it. It wasn't over 100,000, so I wasn't going to be obligated to pay anything. But I didn't understand it at first, and I was helped by Aaron Bennett a lot. He helped me before I, you know, kind of like navigated through it. I figured out that I didn't really have any exposure because it was about $45,000, but I thought that was actually going to come out of my pocket. And I'm like, holy shit, this was like the ledge for me, you know? Not exactly, because I wouldn't do that, only because my kids mean a lot to me, and I know I mean a lot to them, so I wouldn't do that. But it was a tough time when I saw that number and I didn't know what it was. And so I understand, because you know, for me, it was I have a big part of my wealth, had a big part of my wealth in Celsius, a lot of money, and it's my family's money. And here I am getting to the end of my working career. Very, very tough. And I wanted to, you know, share that with people during the spaces over the last several months, but this is really only the second time that I'm communicating on spaces. But figured I'd share that with everybody. I understand, very tough for my wife, for me, and trying to shield the kids from this mess. You know, basically that was my plan for retirement. And so now I'm, you know, last year and a half working hard and struggling back. And so far, so good. And like I said, thank you to everybody. You know, like I've listened to everybody, Cam and all the contributors, Simon and others. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate the community. And I'm a lifer to the Celsius community. That's the bottom line.
Hey, right on, bro.
Yeah, man. So
yeah, thank you so much for sharing it. You know what, the question was, what keeps you mentally strong? Is actually your stories. When as soon as I hear a story like that and everyone's just being real and we're just putting the drama aside and we realize that, you know, behind all these numbers there's just real people with real stories that have got real families that have had to navigate this, and that's why we do this. I think
absolutely,
that's why we do this.
Absolutely. And like I said, you know, as a father, I feel as the leader of the household, a lot of it falls on me, but my wife has been tremendous and, just taking it day by day, but it's been tough, very, very tough. And hating on the Mashinsky motherfucker, let me tell you, he is a motherfucker. And what he's done to people and families is inexcusable. He belongs in jail for the rest of his life, and I really hope he gets his due justice. He deserves it.
He will.
I'm going to celebrate that day when it comes.
Scott, it will be very interesting to see how Mr. Roman, Paran, and Mr. Mashinsky come along. Let's see that.
Yeah, very, very interested in that, and I hope they get their just payment, because they ruined a lot of people and they stressed a lot of people. I mean, even if you didn't, take that plunge to, say sayonara, this took years off of people's lives. Horrible. That's about it. Anyway, I want to lighten it up from here, and I just want to thank all of you. You've been tremendous. You've been an outlet for people like me. You've been information for people like me. Had we not had, really, I mean, it boils down to, Simon, you've been a leader, and you've given a big part of your life for people like me to help keep us informed, and I really appreciate that, along with everybody else. So, kudos to everybody. You guys are awesome. And like I said, I'm a lifer with following the saga, because I'm, now I'm part of the, the company. So I'm here.
Well, Scott, we're all in business together now.
Yeah,
so
man.
We've got this company, and we're all shareholders, and we've got to make sure that those funds are not abused, and we don't, get trapped. And the first step to that was getting people like Cam on the litigation trust and getting some creditors on the oversight board. I would love to have seen more creditor representation on the board. I fought as hard as I could for that. But it's not, again, it's we're all in business together, and that's got to be the blessing, and that we figure out how all these collective skills drive a successful company.
Scott, being in this
Actually,
community,
very excited about that and happy to be part of it.
Scott, being in this community, for me personally, it does not make me feel so much embarrassed about myself, because I know that there are a lot of other smart people who did not see that coming.
That's very true. And actually, I tell my business partner that he was also a pretty big creditor on Celsius. So I tell him, hey, listen, don't feel bad, because we're dumb compared to many of the people that I listen to on Spaces that got hoodwinked. And, not just us, there's others. There's that huge Canadian fund. That kind of put it, at that point, when I found out that, Canada had that huge fund that had been invested in Celsius, I thought at that point, oh, clear sailing. Celsius is good. We're perfect for 10 years. Don't worry about it. I don't even have to look at them.
Scott, at this point, I thought that the allegations made from Swan, right, were not correct. That was kind of my interpretation. But
me too. I heard all that, and I'm like, they don't know what they're talking about. And then the states that were basically banning Celsius from, several of the aspects that they were trying to, like New York, and when Texas was not allowing Celsius to operate, I said, wait a minute, something's going on. I understood New York, and there were several states, but Texas and New York were a couple of them. And I thought, New York, they're just not, they just want to put the brakes on everybody's wealth. But when I understood that Texas also was in that boat, I'm like, some don't seem right here. What's going on with Texas? But, I wasn't, and along with many other people, wasn't smart enough to figure it out. And, hey, look, here we are, community moving forward here, and make the best of it. was a tough one. A lot of people much smarter than myself, and like I said, I have a business partner that also was heavily invested. It's like, listen, don't worry about it, because many people were much smarter than us that were also fooled by this fool, Mashinsky. Or I should say criminal, not really a fool, because he knew exactly what he was doing. And, you know, he'll get his day in court, and hopefully we can all celebrate that one.
You're right. I guess also I'm asking you directly, would you say that we definitely, since that happened as a community, I mean, we said that our preference is now turning to a positive one?
I think.
Well, one of the amazing tasks, and this is, I know we give lawyers shit, and we spent goddamn too much on them, but Kirkland and Ellis did manage to separate all the criminality and from the company, and then that was a very challenging, because this could have just been, after the examiner report, this could have been labeled a Ponzi, and like we could have had just something completely different. But somehow they managed to separate get the criminality on those people and the releases here, and like honestly, it is actually a piece of art, what actually the structure that came in the end. And I know it's like painful because it's not what everyone wanted and stuff, but yeah, to me, when I look at how elegant the end structure was, as long as we can make the company successful, it's interesting. And speaking of Swan, what an interesting turn of events that it ended up that their Bitcoin ended up in custody with Ripple. That was a really funny turn of events.
I mean, Corey's business.
Oh, it's hilarious. Yeah, it's like so aggressively against like XRP and Ripple, and then this crazy turn of events that Prime Trust then rolls over into Fortress, and then Fortress gets bailed out by Ripple, and now all of Swan's customers are custody with Ripple. It was just hilarious. That is just typical crypto drama. Like,
yeah, Corey, he blocked me. So this guy.
Yeah, that's what, when you bash too hard, that's what something like that happens to you. It's crazy.
Well, I just posted it. I just posted a video of him when he was shilling EOS, because he's from the EOS times.
No way. He shilled EOS?
Massively. He was one of a huge EOS shill back in the days, yeah.
That's like Max Kaiser. He had like his shitcoinery background. Like he obviously graduated back to Bitcoin, but all of these people, they became Bitcoin maxis because of the shitcoinery that they went through.
Yeah. Interesting. Hey, Derek, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Fantastic. Where'd you go?
Hey, well, first off, I guess this is the first time I've ever spoken in any of these, and I just wanted to start off by saying thank you to everybody. This has been one of the most draining, frustrating, anxiety-filled time periods of my life. So I just, first off, just want to thank everyone who's participated in these. These have been a sanity lifeline for me. So just appreciate it. Appreciate Simon and everything you've done. And before I get too emotional about it, so I thought everything was going fine to a degree, to a degree within the realm of fine in this area. And I had two different accounts within Celsius. Both of them were for loans, and on one of the accounts, everything got stuck on the platform. I was getting ready to pay it off, moved all the funds there to pay it off, and within 24 hours of doing that, they shut the thing down. So the good news is, I guess, on that one is that there's no clawback exposure because none of the funds actually moved. Everything just went into the platform. On the other one, the market's going down. A margin call's coming in my mind. So I'm like, I don't want to put more capital up for the loan, so I'm going to pay it off. So I pay the loan off, pull my funds out, and I'm hit with the clawback exposure on that one. So super frustrated over that. So my question is, I don't understand in my mind how the clawback is even a thing. I mean, I get it if there's a trail of evidence that someone can prove that, you know, I had insider information to, you know, pull my funds off. Yeah, I think you should aggressively pursue me. But I think most of us are just retail end users, and the market's going down and people want their money off the platform. And, you know, I don't think I'm unique in this situation by any stretch. So how is it that they can come after us at a retail clawback level without any evidence and demand repayment of like 30%, you know, is what they were offering on the ballot? And I'm like, yeah, well, I'm not paying that back. So, I mean,
Derek, I think that's a really good question. But the thing is, have you read the examiner's report?
No, I've been relying on Simon for everything.
No, it's a good point. And Simon, I'm not going to speak for you, but I remember reading part of the examiner's report. And the examiner report, there was a particular paragraph in section that where she believed or inferred that as people were taking out money from a certain period until bankruptcy or when the pause of withdrawals happened, that they were basically using other customers' funds. That as people were depositing money and people were taking out money, the people that were depositing were the ones losing money to the people that were withdrawing. And that's where I can empathize with that possible scenario. I mean, but that's just my personal purview on that.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that helps.
Yeah. So it's like the first thing is again, talking about clawbacks is just such a horrible subject, and maybe Cam wants to chime in, but my understanding is it's not. There is something called insider clawbacks, but the clawbacks is actually about equitable treatment. So you don't have to be an insider. And so they pick this arbitrary number of 90 days. And so imagine like Maszynski's going around lying to everyone saying deposit. And then a bunch of people deposit, and someone else is listening to Corey Clipston saying withdraw. So then the person that listened to Corey Clipston is good, and the person that listened to Maszynski is not good. And so, you know, that 90-day period, and then again, you know, it sucks. What's the difference between 91 and 90? It's like, even like the clawback of 100K, you have, what if you have 101K and someone's got 99,099? You know, it just sucks.
It does.
But yeah, it's just the essence of what it is insider clawbacks are actually treated more aggressively than just the 90 days, which are put in there to try and get a degree of equitable treatment between those that were paid in that period, even if you had inside information or not. But yeah, I hate talking about this topic because I just hear about the impact it has on people.
Derek, I do not want to be a prick, but can you elaborate a little bit more how you had two accounts? Because to the terms of service, right, you should actually have only one account. And I actually thought that Celsius would make sure that everybody could just have one account, or probably two when it's a business account. But could you there provide us with a little bit more details?
Well, I separated it out. I was acting as like one of them was like on a personal level, just my own funds, and then the other one I was acting on behalf of my 401k as a self-directed 401k. So I was using funds from that as part of that process. So I tried to delineate them intentionally so that there wasn't a commingling of funds and stuff like that. So
thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was also, Alex, there was a court docket on the treatment of people that had like these, how they calculate preferences when you had all these strange scenarios, and they tried to clear it up because they must have got, I think the customer service team just got inundated with people that just were asking how they got the maths and stuff. But there was a recent document trying to clarify all of these preference calculations based upon very strange edge cases and stuff. And I think they were like, if someone had two accounts, even though they weren't meant to, I think they made it more favorable where they were like merged into one or something, like the Otis scenario and something like that.
Okay, well, that was my only question. I appreciate again the group and being able to just process through this with everybody else. Thanks.
Thank you, Derek. So do you guys want to keep going a bit, or do we want to wrap it up?
I'm going to wrap it up. You can carry on.
Nati?
No, we can wrap it up. I miss your co-host invite. Whatever. No, that's fine. We'll wrap it up.
Yeah. All right. So I thank everybody for coming. Nati, thank you for everything. Simon, Michael, I don't know if he's still here. Michael, for everything. Sharon, for everything. Yolo, Tony.
Hey, Derek, just before we leave, I was just wondering, are you worried about extra clawbacks, or just the like the 27% that you had to agree to as part of the voting yes on the settlement?
Yeah, I guess I'm not worried about it. I don't know what I'm worried about. I'm worried about everything right now. I'm in the.
I mean, do you have more than 100K clawback exposure?
Yeah, just over.
Okay, well, so and are you in the U.S.?
Yes.
All right, well, so here's the thing. I used to be a debt collector, so I guess if you're worried about a debt collector, you could familiarize yourself with the FDCPA, which is the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, which is the rules that we would have to follow as debt collectors. And I can tell you that they're pretty specific, and there's only so much that you can do. Unfortunately, it sounds like once it gets to the point that the debt has been validated, depending on how aggressive the litigation trust wants to be and how high your claim is, it's not going to be that hard to probably locate you. So once you've been located, they'll send you a letter, and then they'll attempt to make contact with you. Once contact has been made with you, you're going to have the option to speak with me and pay the debt in full. And obviously that's going to be my main objective, but you don't have to do that. We can come to a settlement, and that's probably what I would advise you to do. And in my experience as a debt collector, it is perfectly reasonable. And sorry if I'm giving any information away, Cam, to come to a 50% negotiation on the debt. And
so I'm also part of the retail clawback Celsius group. I signed the non-disclosure on that. So I'm
just speaking in general terms, as far as me coming after you, as you having a debt, right? Once the debt has been validated. And like I said, I'm coming after the full amount of the debt. And if you just hang up the phone, which you have the right to do, you can tell me to go F off. And you can tell me to never call you again. In which case, that just accelerates the involuntary collection methods, which I am perfectly fine with. In fact, I much prefer, right? Especially if you have a job. I much prefer that, right? As opposed to dealing with you, negotiating with you, setting up a payment plan, or whatever, right? So just a heads up, right? If you tell me to go F off or whatever and never call you again, and you got a job or any assets, you just made my day.
Yeah.
So that's kind of just a heads up.
Appreciate that.
All right. Nicola, let's go to Nicola and then Pop Flop. Nicola, how are you doing? Nicola, can you hear us? If yes, maybe you have to unmute.
Hello. Can you hear me now?
Hello. Yes, now.
Thank you. I'm so happy to appear to be a last speaker. I have been listening to the entire spaces, and not only tonight, but through the whole process. I'm kind of echoing many of you, and I'm very grateful to Cam, Simon, the entire crew, CryptoYolo, Tony V, and it's truly like a very closely knit network. And yes, we are done with the voting, but I would support most of us going forward, attending regular spaces like this. We're kind of celebratory now, but in a way, I don't want to sound negative. I am very positive by nature. People like the Celsius leadership, Machinsky and company, they have not disappeared totally. We are entering a new phase thanks to this fantastic computing power and the AI and the beautiful technologies that they are coming, including blockchain. We're entering this, but we're not there yet to take advantage of this full transparency and cooperative features of the human mechanism, because humans generally are, in my view, are very positive. And I'm 75. I'm a medical doctor by trade. I'm an anesthesiologist. So thank you to all your efforts, and I look forward that we very carefully tend to the new baby, to the NewCo, and use the same amount of transparency and courage. Most of us, I would say, I've been, you have seen my faces on all these spaces, all the time. We are courageous people, and we have to keep this courage and the same level of energy going forward to really kind of treat this NewCo like we are really part of it, and we are part of it. And let me stop there. Let me really hug all of you together. So I think that's the only way how we can go forward. Thank you. Cheers to everybody, and love. Bye bye now.
Thank you so much, Nicola.
Absolutely. Thank you. My pleasure. Bye bye.
Cheers. Have a good one, man. Hey, Pop Flop.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks for your positive words, Nicola. I think they're much needed in this situation. A question to the debt collector, Wannabe. Yeah, Wannabe something I cannot see what how does it work in a situation where the people you owe money to, you also have assets custodied with, let's say? Do they have the rights to take over those assets? Because there's a disadvantage.
So first off, you're in a. It's not. Are you in the U.S. or a foreign jurisdiction?
I'm not in the U.S. No.
So from what I understand already, the debt has not been established. So the litigation trust still has to. And again, just from talking to CryptoYolo earlier in the spaces, maybe Simon can speak to this too. The debt has not formally been validated
I get all
yet.
that. I get all that.
So this is important.
I'm talking about, you have a judgment against you.
Exactly. So the judgment has to be made in your jurisdiction. And once that is made, this is super specific to whatever the debt collection laws are in your jurisdiction. So I only know about the laws here in the United States, and there are actually slightly different laws in all 50 states, believe it or not. So when I was doing my debt collection, and like I was actually telling the other guy, it actually depended on what state he was, whether or not I could begin to garnish his wages, actually.
Okay, I see.
So yeah. And we didn't do liens or bank levies. We just offset their tax returns and garnished wages as far as involuntary collection methods. So it's going to 100% depend on the laws in your individual jurisdictions.
I get it. So in fact, now I understand what Cam Cruz was referring to. The litigation. So whoever has coins on the platform, which more than the preference claim, they have the advantage that whatever they negotiate is the final settlement. Because from what you're saying, someone can negotiate a settlement with the litigation trust, but when the debt collection actually comes in, they can then negotiate that with them down to another 50% down, for example. So it's quite interesting dynamic actually.
But remember, the coins on Celsius were not custody. It was determined in court that the coins are property of the estate.
True.
So yeah, it's going to be a hard one to argue. So basically, the current situation is Celsius has the coins. They belong to Celsius, and they have a debt that they owe you. And so then they're saying that due to the bankruptcy code, you now owe them some money, and they owe you some money, and so they're going to offset those off.
Yeah, I don't know if they need if it's a two-step process or a one-step process. If there needs to be a ruling,
it'll be one step. I think they'll just. I don't think they're going to send you the money then ask you to send it back. They're just going to change the database, and then that will be the amount.
Yeah. But Simon, I think what Wannabe is saying that if there's a ruling against you, then they need to take you to your own jurisdiction, get a ruling there as well, and then process the offset.
Yeah, which is why they're going to just keep your coins until you settle if you've got coins on there. I don't think they're going to give them to you. And then you're going to have to fight to say, these are my coins or whatever like that. And then they'll say no. So that's going to be
interesting. Right, but there could be people that have like net clawback exposure.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing I want to say is, there are insider clawbacks, allegedly at least, Mashinsky and all his entourage potentially also included a number of influencers who potentially allegedly had real knowledge that the company was, going into bankruptcy. And we saw some accounts were kind of, they were zero, right? So they had real knowledge. It's not like some people listen to Swan Bitcoin and some others just saw the panic, but some others had factual information. So they need to be treated differently because some acted in survival mode and some acted in maliciousness or alleged something because they knew, right? And some people knew and withdrew, and some people didn't know and withdrew. There's a difference there, and I don't know the law, but it is clear from the tree of connections who potentially knew and who completely knew nothing, right? So
yeah, they are being treated differently as well. So if you're classified an insider, then your clawback exposure goes like 4 years back. And in the case of Maszynski, he's being prosecuted for a crime, and they're being subordinated. But Maszynski is actually coming. His lawyers are trying to not have those subordinated, and he's still trying to get his fair share of Bitcoin, ETH, and equity, and he wants to be a part of NewCo through his entities. But I think he shot down in the confirmation hearing.
thank you, Sean.
Great. Are there any more questions, or we are about to wrap it up? So no more questions. So again, I thank everybody for coming. Nati, Simon, Michael, and all people who were on stage to help the creditors. Give us a follow if you want to keep be notified when there's other spaces happening. Also, sorry for not recording. Next time, if I host a space, I will record in the future. So you can benefit, because this space was actually pretty damn good in terms of information. So sorry for that.
Yeah, I reckon this was literally the most information-packed, best space I've heard. It was so much in here. Amazing, everyone.
Yeah, actually, the next space is, I think we can bring some people that I know. Like, we can really form this into a real community-driven alpha group. Like where real good information people can obtain from.
Gabriel, you're a real good host. You fit my time wherever you are in the world, right? Thailand or something?
Yeah, I'm in Thailand.
Yeah. So I didn't know what time is it over there, but thank you a lot for that. And probably 2 more topics for the next time. We should educate everybody about cold storage. I think this is still a blank spot for a lot of people, and probably also the tax tricks for each and everybody in their different jurisdictions.
Yeah. Oh, there's plenty of a huge amount of interesting topics we can keep covering. And as Simon said before, we are a pretty strong community, and I guess we kind of will stick together. And as long as we stick together, as more we also learn from each other. And we learned pretty a lot already, but now we can also start to learn more about the crypto world in general and why crypto is so fantastic.
Thanks. See each other. Bye-bye.
Hey, cheers, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. Have a good day.
Thank you, Gabriel. Post the space in the community next time you launch one. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Yeah, thank you, Nati. Thank you so much. Cheers, everybody. Have a good one. Don't forget to follow.